Skylar, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
We're about to start.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Malibu City Council regular meeting of August 27, 2018. May I have a roll call?
Councilmember Lamont.
Here.
Councilmember Peak. Councilmember Peak.
Here.
Councilmember Rosenthal.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wagner.
Here.
Mayor Mullen.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Judy Villablanca, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Judy. May I have an approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
Can I have a roll call?
Councilmember Lamont.
Yes.
Councilmember Peak.
Yes. Although I didn't second it.
Councilmember Rosenthal.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wagner.
Yes.
Mayor Mullen.
Yes.
You have a quorum.
May I
Motion
report
carries.
on the posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for this meeting was properly posted on August 16th, 2018, with the amended agenda posted on August 23rd, 2018.
Okay, we're on to ceremonial presentations, and I would like to invite Dr. Judy Villablanca to meet me at the podium. And when I call you, they'll be followed by Susan Duenas for the next one. Dr. Villablanca has been kind enough to accept this proclamation, which I'm going to read, and then I'm going to afford her the opportunity to make a few comments. Whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection report cancer is the leading cause of death by disease among U.S. children between infancy and age 15, this tragic disease is detected in more than 15,000 of our country's young people each and every year. And whereas 1 in 5 of our nation's children loses his or her battle with cancer, many infants, children, and teens will suffer from long-term effects of comprehensive treatment, including secondary cancers. And whereas founded nearly 25 years ago by Stephen Firestein, a member of the philanthropic Max Factor Cosmetics family, the American Cancer Fund for Children, Inc., and Kids Cancer Connection, Inc. are dedicated to helping these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection provide a variety of vital patient physiological services to children undergoing cancer treatment at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, the City of Hope, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Mattel Children's Hospital, UCLA, LA County USC Medical Center, Harvey UCLA Medical Center, as well as participating hospitals throughout the country, thereby enhancing the quality of life for these children and their families. And whereas the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connection also sponsor Courageous Kid Recognition Awards, pet-assisted therapy, family sailing programs, KCC supercar experience, and hospital celebrations in honor of a child's determination and bravery to fight the battle against childhood cancer. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Malibu proclaims the month of September 2018 as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Malibu and urges the community to become more proactive in the fight against this terrible disease. And I'm making this presentation to Dr. Villablanca, who has been kind enough to accept it and say a few words. And she is, in fact, a longtime child oncologist, doctor, if I'm saying that properly. And so here's your proclamation. I'll let you say a few words, then we will get a photo together, okay?
Okay,
There you go.
thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Mullen and City Council members. It is my honor to accept this declaration of September as Children's Cancer Awareness Month, which is observed nationally, on behalf of Mr. Steve Firestein, who's a member of the American Cancer Fund for Children and Kids Cancer Connect, which provide online educational resources as well as support services for families who are coping with a child with cancer. I'm a doctor, as Mr. Mullen said, at Children's Hospital Los Angeles and Hollywood, and I've had the privilege to care for children with cancer and to do clinical research to develop new treatments for children's cancer since 1989. So why is it important to raise awareness for children's cancer? Each year, the parents of almost 16,000 children, young adults from birth to 19 years, hear those words, "Your child has cancer," that probably no parent wants to hear. This is happening to 43 children every single day. And cancer, as Mayor Mullen mentioned, is still the #1 cause of death due to disease in our country. The good news is we have made significant progress. 50 years ago, the survival rate for all pediatric cancers was only 10%, but today it's nearly 90%. In the 1960s, the survival rate for the most common cancer in children, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, was less than 10%, and today is 90%. There are now 375,000 adult survivors of childhood cancer in the United States. But there are subgroups of leukemia and other childhood cancers that still have a poor outcome, and we need to do a better job of limiting side effects that affect children when they grow up for the rest of their lives. Our goal is to find more effective and less toxic treatments to improve not only survival, but also quality of life. These improvements I mentioned in outcome have been made possible by research that provided a better understanding of the genes and the biologic pathways that drive cancer, which have allowed us to develop more precise and targeted therapies. In recent years, probably many of you have read a lot in the news about targeted immune therapies, which actually use the patient's own immune system and stimulate it to kill the cancer cells, and have actually shown some significant strides in responses and increased survival in cancers. To give you a real-life example of the importance of awareness of children's cancer and research to help improve the outcome, one of my own patients who was diagnosed actually before a year of life with cancer and relapsed when he was 3 years old. And I remember sitting with his father and telling him that I didn't think he was going to be with us for his 4th birthday, since he had such a poor outlook. He went on to receive 5 different clinical trials, 3 of which have subsequently become standard therapy for children with his type of cancer because they were shown to be effective. And he is now 24 years old and healthy and cancer-free. And I recently actually had dinner at Tradnoy in Malibu with he and his father to celebrate how well he's doing. However, only 4% of our annual federal cancer research budget goes to children, which is not enough. And so philanthropic funding remains critical to support our work in children's cancer research. In Malibu, on September 15th and 16th, we will be hosting again the Nautica Triathlon. Many of you have probably participated in this fun event. Many more have participated in the related traffic. You may not be aware, this event has actually raised over $12 million for children's cancer research at the cancer program at my hospital, Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And if you are out there participating, you're going to be running and swimming and biking with parents of children with cancer who participate every year to raise funding and to raise awareness because they know how important it is. So I hope that if you are participating in the triathlon or if you are stuck in traffic, that you will realize that it is really for a very good cause. Thank you again to the City Council and to the City of Malibu for recognizing the importance of Children's Cancer Month.
So we have no Matt Meyerhoff. Perhaps you can have me on my camera and we'll do a little selfie. What do you say?
Sure.
Oh, good. And now if I could have Susan Duenas, Public Safety Director, please join me at the podium. And this is to recognize, this is a proclamation recognizing September 2018 as National Preparedness Month, which I think is probably every month here in Malibu, wouldn't you say? Whereas the city of Malibu is vulnerable to earthquakes, floods, fires, rock slides, tsunamis, and other natural disasters, and whereas in 2017 there were 138 natural disasters in the United States, 18 of which were in California, and there have already been 63 natural disasters nationwide in 2018, with 9 of those occurring in California, and whereas the city has a responsibility to promote preparedness, provide preparedness information, and plan appropriately for responding to natural disasters, and whereas there will be providing a number of preparedness training events for both the city staff and the community during September, including a public safety and preparedness expo on Saturday, September 29th. Remember that? Everybody should show up at City Hall, which will provide the community an opportunity to take preparedness classes, purchase supplies, and speak with local first responders. And whereas the city will conduct the second full-scale test of its disaster notification system in an effort to increase cell phone registration and maximize the system's effectiveness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Malibu does hereby proclaim the month of September 2018 as National Preparedness Month, and Malibu encourages its citizens to become more prepared for disasters. Thank you for accepting this proclamation, and would you like to say a few words?
Just a few words. Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Mullen, council members. We hope that this is going to become an annual event, that September we will be doing a Safety Preparedness Expo to provide people an opportunity to learn. We're going to have a lot of classes offered at our expo, as well as an earthquake simulator trailers that's going to be there. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great family event. And then also the test of our disaster notification system. This is definitely going to be an annual thing that we will do, and it's going to be throughout the month. We've broken the city up into 4 sections, starting with Western Malibu will be the first week of September, and then the second week will be we call Western Central, then Eastern Central. To look to see which day your neighborhood is going to be tested, you can go to our website. If you go to malibucity.org/emergency, we have a map that shows where it is. And so I look forward to doing this every year, and I hope everyone takes the opportunity to get more prepared.
You want to get a picture?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. The only reason I have my arm around Judy in the picture as opposed to Susan is that our kids grew up together and we've known each other for a long time. No offense, Susan. All right. Now we're going to have a presentation by Los Angeles County Assessor Jeffrey Prang on the real estate trends in the city of Malibu. If you could come to the podium, Mr. Prang.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. It's an honor to be here. I think this is the first time I've had the privilege of being here in the city of Malibu since I became your assessor. Councilmember Rosenthal suggested I come to your meeting. She thought I could add a little bit of excitement into these proceedings in a way that could only be done by the county property tax assessor. So I did want to, before I go to my remarks, I did want to say a couple things. One of the things I always like to tell the public when I begin is to tell you what I am not. I am not the tax collector. You do not send your property tax to me. You send it to another guy who has a really intuitive title. He's called the tax collector. My job is to assess the market value of property in the county, which is the foundation for property taxes, but I don't send out tax bills, nor do I collect the revenues. My office is the largest agency of its type in the United States. We have 1,400 employees. I am responsible for assessing 2.5 million parcels of property annually throughout Los Angeles County, valued at $1.57 trillion, the largest local assessment role anywhere in the state. The principal job of my office is to locate and assess the fair market value of all taxable property, including land, buildings, and improvements, as well as business personal property. These assessments are combined and published annually in the what we call the assessment roll, which is the accounting of all taxable property. This roll is an important tool for gauging real estate and economic trends in the region, and it's also probably one of the best indications we have of the overall state of the real estate market in Los Angeles County. Earlier this month, I certified and delivered the assessment roll for 2018. Our figures show that the local property market continues to be on an upswing, which is a significant difference from where we were just about a decade ago, when the recession and the real estate crisis actually resulted in a declining assessment roll. Since 2011, however, the roll has reflected gradual increases. In fact, the 2018 figure of 6.62% increase in property values is not only the 8th consecutive year of growth, but it also represents the largest increase since prior to the recession. This may not come as a surprise, but the largest variables responsible for the increase in the assessment roll are sales and new construction. Changes in ownership added $48 billion to the assessment roll over the last year, while new construction added $11 billion. What this means is that nearly 9 out of 10 homeowners will see the standard 2% adjustment to their property assessment for inflation pursuant to Proposition 13. Geographically, the strongest annual growth in the county was the City of Industry, which grew at over 12.1%. Some other cities that had strong growth were Inglewood, over 10%, Linwood at almost 10%, Santa Monica, which always finishes strong, at 8.9%, and Compton at 8.4%. All of them were well above the county average of 6.62%. Malibu also had a healthy increase of 7.3% over 2017. By comparison, the beach cities range from 5.5% to 6.5%, Hidden Hills at 8.2%. For 2018, the sum of all taxable property in Malibu, the assessed value of the city was $16.93 billion, for a total of 6,824 properties, which includes 6,100 single-family homes, about 191 rental properties, and 461 commercial and industrial parcels. In all, the local real estate market across the county looks to have continued to grow as more properties are being bought and sold, and values are recovering from the recession and actually reaching new highs. One of the features I wanted to also highlight this evening about this year's assessment roll is that it had the largest direct savings that we have seen. You'll often hear us refer to something called exemptions and exclusions. These are programs that help you save money on your property tax bills. This year we enrolled $59.8 billion in exemptions alone, which translates into almost $600 million in savings for homeowners, veterans, and community organizations. One of the most popular exemptions that everybody who owns a home, and it is their primary residence, who qualifies for is the homeowner's exemption. About 40% of LA County residents who live in their own home who qualify for the homeowner exemption failed to apply for it. So I'm hoping that if you're at home and watching this meeting tonight, you'll check on our website, which is assessor.lacounty.gov, to see if you have the exemption. If not, it's a very easy form to fill out. You can download online, or you can contact us, and we will help you. So in closing, I just wanted, a lot of people don't really quite know what the assessor is. They think of us as it relates to their property tax bill, but I just want to emphasize that in many ways, my office is the most important local government agency that there is, because nobody else, and the truth is, nobody else gets to do their job until I've done mine. No teacher walks into a classroom, no sheriff's deputy rolls to a call, and no roads get paved until it's paid for, which is primarily through sales and property taxes. So if I don't do my job well and thoroughly, that means that there's dollars that you are entitled to spend on behalf of your constituents that aren't being collected. So it all begins here. We're working hard to make sure your residents are being treated fairly and equitably, but also to make sure that you have the resources that you're entitled to provide those services to your community that they deserve. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you for a couple of minutes the update on the report of our office, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Any questions for Mr. Frank? There you go, Lou.
Yeah, one of the things that you didn't mention, and that I know that you did, is you spent the last 4 years, bringing the department into the 21st century. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's hard to believe, and a lot of people laugh, but when I took office 4 years ago, I inherited this 1970s era mainframe, green screen, DOS-based computer system. And the property files that we have, 2.5 million of them, each of those were still associated with a paper file. So when you contacted our office with a question about your property, we'd have to access one of a half a dozen different green screens that were hard to read, not very robust. We may have to refer you to one of 6 different locations throughout the county where physical property files were maintained. Terribly inefficient for the taxpayers. So we are spending almost $100 million to upgrade that system. We have digitized all of our documents. We have upgraded our website, and in the interest of transparency, we have downloaded historic assessment data going back to the early 1980s. So now it's possible for the public to get information about your property in an easy to use and easy to navigate format, as well as get historic data. It's a lot faster for our employees and faster, most importantly, for the public.
Any other questions? Laura?
Well, actually, Lou said exactly what I was going to say, too, and it was one of the reasons that I asked you to come, because I think that actually the first couple of years that Lou and I were on council, I remember your predecessor came, who was subsequently, I believe he's in jail.
He was in jail, yes.
He was in jail. And I just wanted to say thank you for bringing, for modernizing your department and for bringing much needed respect back to the assessor's office.
We know there's a tenet in management where they say that you should never fail to take advantage of a crisis. And my predecessor left a crisis, but we took advantage of that to rethink the way this department works, to use that momentum to try to rebuild and rethink how it provides public service. We've made a lot of improvements that for anybody who watches our office, I think we've made positive changes in a quantifiable way, and it's been a really good, men and women in my department have worked really hard to restore public confidence and provide public value.
And I think you have, and I think it's also important for Malibu to see how well we're doing, whether it's compared to other cities or not, and how strong our assessed value is. So thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor. Thank you.
Jefferson, anything?
Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for using the old Malibu sign in your presentation.
Skylar, anything?
Jeffrey, thank you very much for coming to the city, and I appreciate all your hard work and keeping everybody honest.
Thank you very much, Councilman.
Thanks very much, Jeff. And, he's not joking about that DOS-based green screen system. I'm a county employee, and that's actually what our payroll system is still on. So it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess, is what they normally say. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, well, now we're going to have a presentation by Southern California Edison on grid resiliency and public safety. Diane Fort, if you could come to the podium. Diane, we've been cracking the whip on her to keep her presentation to 10 minutes, but if she can't keep within that, I'm sure we'll be able to give you a little more time. All right, Diane?
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Mullen and council members. Thank you for having us. I'm Diane Forte, Government Relations Manager for Southern California Edison. With me tonight, I also have Tammy Tumlin, who's our director, and Robert Quintero, who's a principal manager, who's my boss. So just help on my PDP here. Yeah. And with local public affairs, we have Steve Sprague, district manager, and Brian Chen, who's the principal manager of grid resiliency. Tonight, Bob Steens, public affairs manager, will present on mitigating wildfires in Malibu and other high fire risk areas, including grid hardening and operational practices. And I just have 2 brief points. I understand you've been reading a lot about public safety, power shutoff, PSPS, and I just want to clarify, there seems to be some misconceptions about what it is. It's not a mandatory blackout of the entire city of Malibu. There are 8 circuits in Malibu. PSPS is a rare practice of last resort, SE may proactively shut off power in high fire risk areas. We have 900 jurisdictions in high fire risk areas when there's an imminent threat to public safety to stop wildfires during extreme weather conditions with an advance notice protocol in which of a circuit or a couple of circuits in a city may experience an outage. And Bob will elaborate more on that in his presentation. It's not something we take lightly. As you know, we've been working a lot on service reliability in Malibu, and it has improved 45% from 2017 to 2016. Secondly, we want to communicate and notify our customers, which are your residents, so that they can prepare in advance for an outage. Edison, really values the advanced communication that we want to have. If I just may speak as a resident, a customer, so I'm in a high fire risk area. We all have received this notification. I spoke a little bit with Councilmember Lamonti about what are we going to do to prepare. I understand it's really a concern of everybody, and how do we prepare for wildfires is very important. Also, when you get this letter, it shows you how to sign up for notices. You can get a text, an email, or a phone call in advance of an outage, and I encourage everyone to do so, to go online. We also have a program for medical baseline customers. This is a medical baseline application. You can get that also online, and I have extra ones in that. We also do extra notification for medical baseline customers. So SCE agrees we all need to work together, work collaboratively to ensure our communities are prepared in the event of a power outage. And I thank you. Bob Steens will present, and then we'll be available for questions.
Thank you, Dan.
So thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Before I begin with the details of our program, I'd just like to say, we acknowledge that shutting off the power to our customers is a major disruption. It's not one we take lightly. I mean, we've been in business a long time, and we take pride in keeping the lights on. But this is a practice, as Diane mentioned, and we'll talk about later, is something that it's a practice of last resort. One we think will be used very sparingly. And it's also talk about, we've designed a robust notification process for notifying local governments as well as customers. So SCE believes that the benefits of shutting off the power outweigh the disruption it will cause. And recently, the California Public Utilities Commission acknowledged that, and I quote, "De-energizing of electric facilities can save lives, protect property, and prevent fires." So we'll go through the presentation so we can leave some time for questions. This is a map. It's showing the high fire risk areas that were identified by both the California Public Utilities Commission and then some additional areas that SCE has identified as high fire risk areas. About 33% of Southern California Edison's service territory is in one of those 3 high fire risk areas, including the entire city of Malibu. So I want to talk about what is our mitigation strategy to help reduce the risk of wildfire. And we'll go through this. We have 4 categories. One is our long-standing operational practices, our system hardening, and we'll talk about that in a bit as well, some of our new technologies, our situational awareness, and then the enhancement of our operational practice, which includes the public safety power shutoff. So most electrical interruptions or faults are momentarily caused by, for example, a bird or a metallic balloon making contact with the power lines. Under normal conditions, the grid tests the line, and if it finds no faults, it re-energizes the line. However, under red flag warnings and circuits that are in the high fire risk area, before we automatically re-energize the line during a red flag situation, we actually send someone out to patrol the lines to make sure there's no tree branches in the lines or there's no metallic balloon or other issues. And I'll now go over the other categories of what we call our system hardening. So we're doing a number of putting out a number of improvements in system hardening. One is our some composite poles that we're putting up in certain areas, and these are resistant to fires. Also some fuses, but what I'd really like to spend some time on is what we call covered conductor. As you see up there on the right, the lines that we currently have in our system, and it's the industry standard, is bare wire. It's been the industry standard for forever. But what we're doing is in high fire hazard areas, we're going through and inspecting, determining where it would be good to place those. And we'll be installing over the next several years 4,000 circuit miles of covered conductor. And the advantage of those is if a branch flies into the lines, it is much less likely to start a fire. And over the next, as I mentioned, over the next several years, we're replacing about 4,000 miles. We're also going through with other system hardening measures, and we're finalizing that list and where we're going to be doing that. And once that information is available, Diane will be happy to share that with. We'll get that to Diane. She can share that with the city. Another thing I want to key on is our improved and advanced we call situational awareness or weather monitoring systems. So one of the keys for when we decide to do the de-energization is to get a good indication of what the local weather service, what the local weather is, what it is in Malibu and the areas around it. Not just relying on National Weather Service saying Los Angeles County is projected to get winds of X. We want to be able to predict and monitor what it is at a smallest level possible. So to help do that, we're installing throughout our service territory 125 weather stations, and there's a picture of one in the upper left-hand corner. We're putting those on our existing poles. And in the city, we've already installed about 14 of those in the greater Malibu area. And if you look at the bottom, there's a link, that Meso West weather. That's available for the public to go in and look and see what the current weather conditions are, not just on Edison's weather stations, but there's many other weather stations that are out throughout our service territory, so you can monitor those. We're also procuring weather data from different sources, again, to help us get a much more micro, the forecasting and get micro real weather conditions on what it is in the individual circuits in some cases. The other thing we're doing is we started this year, we put a high definition fire camera. We put it up in Santiago Peak in Orange County, and it actually if you actually have some time and Google that, there were some really interesting shots of the Holy Fire recently in the last couple of weeks that came up right by those weather stations. And those cameras are live. It's a statewide network, primarily in San Diego, but we're going to be expanding that. And that information is also available on the website here, the wildfire, the Alert Wildfire org. And that's all available for the public to see. We do give fire departments the ability to go in and control those cameras, so they can use that as once a fire starts, they can help them identify where it is and the amount of resources they need to deploy. It's helped tremendously in San Diego County, and we're going to be deploying more of those throughout our service territory. We're working with UC San Diego, who is the monitor who aggregates all the data, and local fire departments to see where we should be deploying more cameras in our service territory. So that's sort of some of the background, the system hardening. What I want to spend most of the time talking about is what we call the public safety power shutoff. It's a practice that and we'll talk about this later, we hope to use very rarely and sparingly. So it's a practice where we would go ahead and we would de-energize a line proactively to help public safety. There's several factors that go into the decision. I know there's some feeling that people have expressed anytime the Santa Ana winds blow or anytime there's a red flag blows, we're going to do that. That's not true. So there's three major factors that go into the decision. One is weather. What's the projected and the current wind speeds? What are the humidity levels? The fuel moisture. So that's one part of the equation. The other part, and that's the weather, the other part, which is very important for us, is before we de-energize, we will be sending out what we call patrolmen or troublemen to monitor the line and get real live intelligence of what's going on. So they'll have their hand weather gauges, but more importantly, they'll be giving us real feedback from what's going on the ground. Is there a lot of debris flowing through the air, or is it fairly calm? And the other very important factor is what we call situational awareness. So those are things like, did we send out our notifications? Have the local emergency responders been notified? What is going on in the area? Is the city or is the community trying to do an evacuation at the same time? And if the answer to that is yes, those are all factors that get taken into account when we do the de-energization. We've also, and one of the big concerns to the community is the communications, Caltrans. So we're working with Caltrans District 7, have educated them on the public safety power shutoff protocol. And we're happy to participate in a meeting between Caltrans and the city if we're asked to. We've also held workshops with the communication companies, and we found out that most of them have some type of a battery backup, and they do have the ability to deploy generation. And as I'll talk about in a second here, we're going to be providing a 48-hour, 24-hour advance warning to local governments, to water companies, to water providers, to cell companies, and to the general public. So by giving that advance warning, that 48-hour and 24-hour warning, the communication companies will be able to decide where they need to potentially deploy generators or other emergency backup programs. So what I'll do here is walk through the timeline for a public safety power shutoff. And our timeline starts about 4 to 7 days out, and that's when we're monitoring the local weather conditions. We have a staff of meteorologists, so they're doing their forecasting, monitoring sources, as well as, again, these local weather stations. We're not making any public announcements at this time, but it's just us gathering information so we can start being prepared. 3 days out, and I want to qualify a couple of things here. When I say 3 days ahead, that's before the weather conditions that could cause us to de-energize happen. It's not necessarily 3 days before we're going to de-energize, but it's 3 days before we expect those weather conditions to occur. So at 3 days out, we'll do an operational call. We have several incident management teams, which is part of the incident command system that we would deploy. At this point in time, the team that's on duty next, the 2 teams that are on duty next, will get a notification, be put on alert, be prepared to report in 24 hours if necessary. And then we're just going through all of our internal checklists, making sure we're ready to go in the next 24 hours if we need to. So 24 hours later, if the conditions are still present that may cause us to de-energize, the incident management team that is on duty would report to our emergency operations center in Irwindale. And it's also when we begin notifying our local government partners and our customers. So we have 4 phases of our communication. The first phase is to notify local governments, first responders, because we know as soon as we start calling customers, we know they're going to be calling City Hall, the police department, the sheriff's station, the fire department. So we're going to give, our goal is to give a 2-hour notice, a heads up to the local governments before we start notifying customers. And again, this is not 2 hours before we're going to shut off power. So we're at 48 hours ahead of time before we plan on shutting off power. Now again, the wind conditions can change, but that's our practice. The next set of customers that get notified are what we call our critical care customers. And those are customers that are on some type of a life support system. And we already have a separate, right now, if there was an outage, an extended outage, we have a system in place for those customers to get special treatment. So we use what we call an auto dialer to call those customers up. If we did not detect that they actually answered the phone, well then a member of our staff will call. And if after a couple of times of that, we will send what we call a field service representative to their door to knock on the door. We also do annual outreach to those customers to make sure that we have the latest contact information and that they have information about basic emergency planning. The second set of customers that get notified are, the third set of customers that get notified are what we call our essential customers, major customers. So those are major water facilities, cities, county facilities. They would get the notification, again, by text, email, and phone. And then the last set of customers that get notified are the residential customers and the business customers. Again, our plan is to do this notification 48 hours before we would potentially de-energize. Now, again, wind conditions can change, but we're fairly confident that we can do this. We then repeat the same process 24 hours out in the same order. Now, in between, we've got our Emergency Operations Center up in Irwindale. We would also have, if the county stands up its Emergency Operations Center, we would have an agency rep at the county Emergency Operations Center. And then we would also be in contact with the city, like Diane Forte would be in contact with the city to hear concerns, and that all gets fed into our Emergency Operations Center. As I mentioned, one of the things we want to know, one of the factors that gets into account when we do the de-energization is what else is going on in the community. So if we hear that there's an evacuation going on in the community, we want to know that because that all gets factored into our decision to de-energize. We've provided local governments GIS layers of the circuits that are part of the program, part of the PSPS program, and have asked for input. What are your critical concerns about those facilities that are on those circuits? Because again, it all goes into our planning on whether to de-energize or not. So in that, between the 2 days out and when we de-energize, and even during the de-energization process, we are available 24/7. The city has a special phone number to call to access our Emergency Operations Center. So then we begin, as I mentioned, we do the same process 1 day out, and then we do it again when we shut off the power. You might ask, why are we calling customers to say your power's out? Well, the reason is we want them to know their power's out because of the PSPS program, so that they're not calling the call center to say my power is out. And as Diane mentioned, it was in the letter that we sent out. It's key for customers that go in and update their customer contact information. Just like the city's your emergency notification system, it's only as good as the information we have. So we're encouraging customers. We did this in the letter. We do this in every presentation like I'm doing right now, encouraging customers to go in and update their customer contact information. We'll talk about it in a minute. We're doing community meetings throughout our service territory, and we've got one planned for mid-October for the Malibu area. We've got what we call our customer service representatives at this open house or at this community meeting with their computers, and customers come up and update their contact information there. And then we repeat the same process as we re-energize or turn the power back on. Again, one of the reasons we want to contact the customers then is so that if their power is still out, even though we've re-energized the circuit, it could be out because the line that feeds their house is down, so we want them to report that to our call center. One thing on the power restoration, just because the wind is stopped blowing doesn't mean we can automatically turn on the power. We need to go out and patrol the line to make sure there's no trees in the branches, there's no balloons, there's no equipment problems. Now, the good part is in a community like Malibu, we can do that fairly quickly because most of the circuits are available by, we can see by driving up and down the street, so it can be done fairly quickly. Once the circuit is, once the patrolmen review the circuit, it's re-energized, and they say it's clear, it's re-energized in a matter of minutes. So now I want to talk about some of the conditions, and I want to qualify that.
Okay, we're going to have to start wrapping it up here.
Okay, I got 2 more.
Okay, good.
So that, again, there's a misconception out there that anytime there's a red flag warning, we're going to turn off the power or start this program. That's not true. And this is illustrative. The wind conditions have to be much higher than just what would cause a red flag warning before we would turn off the power. There's other factors that go into consideration, such as the humidity and other factors. How many times are we going to do this a year? We've gone back and looked at past weather patterns, and we estimate throughout our entire 50,000 square mile territory, from Malibu to Blythe, from Laguna Beach to Tulare, we would do this between 2 to 10 times a year. And it's not 2 to 10 times a year in Malibu. That's throughout our entire service territory. And just quickly, the last slide here on some of our outreach activities, because we feel it's very important for customers and stakeholders to know about this program, so that we're doing direct mail to the customers, which, as the letter Diane showed about the Dear Neighbor letter. We've got a website up. We're beefing up that website. We're doing community meetings. And we don't have the date completely nailed down yet or confirmed, but we're looking at mid-October for a meeting for Malibu and the surrounding community. Out meeting with local governments, doing city council presentations, and we're doing workshops with emergency planning managers. We've done a couple with LA County, and we're going to continue to do those, as well as traditional and social media. So that's the Reader's Digest version of our program. I'm happy to.
That was the War and Peace version. But I appreciate that.
It's normally about a
Thank
half-hour
you very much.
presentation.
So we gave you
invite
a
my
lot,
colleague up, Brian,
a
for
lot more time
support on any technical
than-
questions.
Well, we got an hour's worth of speakers here, so we're going to have to kind of move the ball along unless there's something important you have to say. Are you just here for questions?
No, if just for answering questions.
You guys got any questions right here? Or you want to go to speakers?
I have an opinion. Are you ready for that yet?
Laura, why don't you have a question first?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that, that people understood that this was a presentation and it wasn't a back and forth kind of agenda item. And that you will be doing, you mentioned doing a public meeting in October in Malibu. And so I gather that will be the chance for most of the public to be able to come and ask questions and yell, talk, whatever it is, to you about this. And that, and please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but this was an informational to present to us. This is not something we're voting on or that we might have even a large say in. I mean, besides all the opinions that a lot of us might have and other questions that I might have, I just wanted to, is that information correct? That you will be having a public meeting about this for people to really air their grievances and their concerns? And
yeah, and what we do in those public meetings is we bring in a number of subject matter experts. So there's subject matter experts on the notification process, on the outage process, on the PSPS process, on the system hardening process. And it's set up so that customers, people can come in and talk to those subject matter experts directly. There's also a presentation part of the community meeting. But the good part is they all get to go talk to a subject matter expert who knows in a lot of detail about the individual specifics of the program.
well, and I do want people to also understand that the city of Malibu sent a pretty strongly worded letter outlining our concerns and our residents' concerns about this program. Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Lou, still want to chime in?
I really appreciate you coming down here and explaining this. And I did a very long conversation with Diane on the phone about this, and my opinion is still exactly the same. This doesn't seem so much geared towards fire safety as it is the liability of Edison. And if you really want to solve that problem, you see my friends agree. If you want to solve that problem, instead of spending all that money, you should underground all your lines, and this would not be an issue. And I'll wait to hear what the rest of my council members and the public have to say. But as far as I'm concerned, I think maybe it works in San Diego, but for Malibu, this is a horrendous, disastrous idea. We have the PCH and 2 canyons out of here. If you're in San Diego, there's probably 100 ways to get out of town. Here we have these ways, and if we can't tell people how to get to these places or which ones are open, there is nothing but disaster that I could see.
Thank you, Lou. And Jefferson?
Thank you. I spent some time on the phone with Diane about the concerns that had been expressed by many community members. And the big one was communication. And so I'll leave that to you to address communication, but we felt that we should be looking at outside resources as part of your communication plan, because the city of Malibu, although it's very extensive and it just concerns itself with the city of Malibu, most of these fires or disruptions of service start up at the 101 corridor and progress toward the ocean. So an early warning system is helpful, but I think you need to deal with the press, and Diane's comment was she would check with the lawyers. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jefferson. Skylar, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Mayor. I, like Jefferson, also did speak with Diane on the phone. I have many different concerns, I think, as a lot of our residents do, but one question that comes to mind is that if Edison had looked at the previous years, last year, for example, how many times would they have estimated that the weather would meet these conditions where they would have had to turn off one or more circuits in Malibu? And I don't know if they have that information now, but that would be, to kind of let the community know, how often would one expect this to actually happen?
Hi, Councilmember Peak. This is Brian Chen from Southern California Edison. So as Bob had mentioned in the slides previously, we did look back at historical meteorological data to try to estimate, looking forward, how often we think we might need to use this across the system. But one of the things we're trying to do is build out our weather station network. And so there was a lot of gaps in terms of the weather at a very microclimate. We have very unique topology across our service territory. And so understanding what the wind speeds or the conditions in a particular canyon area could vary considerably. In addition, the decision to de-energize doesn't happen until somebody from our field is out seeing and verifying the conditions on the ground using a wind speed monitor, seeing the actual conditions. And so we wouldn't really know whether we would de-energize or not, even with the historical data. So our best guess was on a service territory-wide basis. We don't have any information specific to Malibu.
Thank you.
Okay. And then my next question, or I guess comment, is just that I understand the commitment to providing safe and reliable power. And I would really encourage you guys to work on your communication with our residents, which seems like you are, but it's very frustrating and unnerving to our residents to hear that their power is going to be turned off, even if they do get 2 days notice in the event of one of these emergency red flag situations. And I just really hope that you guys are doing the best job that you can to provide safe and reliable power to the customers in our community and throughout Southern California.
Thank you, Skylar. Jefferson, you have one more comment.
Thank you. Could you furnish to our Public Safety Department the 8th Circuit map so that residents may understand what circuit they are and look accordingly to their concerns? Because you say there's 8 circuits. We don't know 1 from 8, and it would sure help us out, and our public safety officers would surely appreciate that, because I'm not aware of it, and I looked through all your data.
Sure, we can work with Susan on that.
Laura, did you have something else?
Yeah, I had a couple of other questions, and these are things that I've spoken to Diane about before. One of my big concerns is those people that rely on electricity for, that are in the CARE program, that rely on electricity for medical, for oxygen, for a whole bunch of different things. And I didn't see anything in there about helping them, like SCE helping to subsidize getting them generators and those kinds of things so that they would not, I mean, I know that you're going to let them know, but you also need to help them make sure that they can keep their medical equipment going. And I think that subsidies or other programs for generators would be very important, and I'd like you to look into that. I don't understand why it's going to take 2 to 3 years to put in those covered conductors. Why couldn't that be something, I'm not asking for answers right now, okay. But why couldn't that be something that would be done much, much more quickly? I would imagine it will save you a lot of money in the end if those get done. And you said when there were a lot of when there's a lot of debris flying around, that would be one of the determining factors when you go out. Do you have any other ideas to deal with it besides turning off the power? Maybe working and having crews out there that would be monitoring and helping to keep the debris off. And I know we have an item later about some of that. And I also about the 2 to 10 times a year that you've actually had to do this program. I wonder how often you've had to do it in the last 5 years, because our climate is different now. It used to be for people that have lived here for a while that the Santa Ana winds basically came in the fall. Well, now they come all year round. And there's a lot more, the air is drier, the brush is drier, there's more things that are flying around. And so even though you've had to do it very infrequently, I wonder if that's a little skewed, those statistics, and it's happened more often. And then, the bottom line is, what's your plan for us communicating with each other, with the city, with the authorities, if there's no power? And I think that's a bottom line question.
Okay.
I assume that's a question you just want them to consider.
Yeah, well,
or do you want them to
I really
answer it
would
now?
like answers to these and responses for the community meeting in October. I don't want to take any more time with that now, but I think that these are all important questions. And I think that I could completely agree with Lou, but I think that we need answers outside of the box and solutions outside of the box. And it's unacceptable to just turn off the power.
Thank you, Laura.
If possible, I'd like to just make a point of clarity. So
Go ahead.
in terms of your question around the 2 to 10 times, we've actually only done a power shutoff twice in our company's history. One time last year to the city of Idlewild, and then about 10 years before that. The 2 to 10 is because we think there's a new normal, that we want customers to be prepared that we may need to do this in the future more.
Thank you for clarifying that. Thank you, gentlemen, and Diane, for coming down here and making this presentation. Sincerely appreciate it. I think I want to echo what the previous speaker, Jeffrey Prang, said, that you don't want to miss capitalizing on a crisis to improve things and to learn. And I think that probably all of this recent fire activity is a great opportunity for getting the dialogue going. And this is part of that dialogue. And there are a lot of variables that can be improved for this equation. Some of that's already happening with the strengthening of the power poles, et cetera. I have a different perspective than most people. I work with Southern California Edison in emergency response, and their responders are great. They really do amazing things. And I think that the more we talk about this ahead of time, the better off everyone will be. I appreciate you coming down here and not only clarifying what this is all about to everybody, but being willing to listen to what the public has to say. And on that note, I have like an hour's worth of public speakers, and this is just item 1. We're not even on to the main agenda item. So I'd like to talk to the council members and see if they would be open to reducing the time from 3 minutes to 2 minutes for each speaker.
I would be up for that.
This is an important topic, and I know it adds to our evening. However, this is just like FEMA, one of the big ones. I think we really need to let everybody vent. I'm happy that they brought their pens and pencils and not pitchforks. So I really feel the 3-minute thing, and most of these people are our residents, and they won't take 3 minutes. Some of them will take a minute or two to say they agree. I think we should just give them the opportunity to take their full time.
Thank you, Jefferson. Lou?
I agree with Jefferson. Let's let people speak. This is a very important issue.
Skylar?
I would second that.
Okay, 3 minutes each. All right, I'm going to read the speakers out, and I want you to come up, please, and I'm going to read like 3 names out, and I want you to get into the ready position for numbers 2 and 3 so we can expedite this whole thing. Kasich Ulrich Bolhoff. I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. You'll be followed by John Casier, excuse me, and followed by Richard Feinstein. Ulrich, where are you? You're first.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm an electrical engineer, and I own the company Buell Solar, so I should be happy because I'm a solar power expert and backup expert. But I'm actually not, because I think it's ridiculous, this kind of shutting off the power. It's not necessary because, for example, the gas company has rapid shutdowns. In case of an earthquake, they could do something similar. As they say, they can harden the lines by putting the insulators on it. That's a good idea, or going underground, which is very expensive. So I agree with all of this. So I don't see that shutting off the power, when there's already fire, there's already fire. And when there's an earthquake, they can do the rapid shutdown. But just turning it off because of something, I don't agree with, because of all the other reasons other people will say, for the emergency communication and for people who need power and so on and so on. What I also want to address is something else. This exactly is out of the book of Agenda 21. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030 is driving the people out of rural areas into the cities because the infrastructure gets taken down bit by bit by bit, you know. And is that a conspiracy theory? Maybe, maybe not. It's the same like $21 trillion debt, another false flag coming up in Syria, and the immigration war what we have going on in Europe against culture. So we have bullshit going on, as well as Edison is also related to Edison International, is related to Rothschild. So please take a look to this. And all out of this concern, I'm totally against this because this is another pack against us. This is against us, the people. And I don't like it, even so I could make money of it. I don't like it politically. So anybody else needs some more time? I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrich. Appreciate that. John Casey, you are next.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sorry about that.
Thank you guys for being here and representing us. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank Laura and Lou and Jefferson for immediately addressing a lot of the things that I know that I wanted to say that a lot of people are saying, and I'm here to help support that. I'm type 1 diabetic. I live in Topanga Canyon, on Old Canyon. Without power, I have no telephone, I have no cell phone, I have no internet, and I have no television. And I'm very proud of the setup that we've had over the last number of years with evacuation, trials that we do. And it's been set up really well, but none of it works without power. And I think the most important thing is what you said, Laura. Once you turn off the power, it doesn't matter how much time you tell us in advance. Once you turn it off, anything happens during that time, there's no communication. The only thing that is going to happen is by the time you know about it, it's chaos. I've lived 30 years in Topanga, and during the '94 fire, the only way that I knew about it was a police car with a speaker going up and down the road, and by then, I almost couldn't get out of the canyon. The fire had already gotten really bad. So, and obviously today there are a lot more people, there's a lot more traffic. Getting out of the area would just be a nightmare. So, I support especially what the point of view of Laura and Lou and Jefferson in this. I think that that a lot of us will be will let you know that that we feel that our needs won't be fulfilled in that situation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Richard, you are next. Richard, you're going to be followed by Scott Dietrich and then Beth Burnham.
Thank you. I built a house in 1979 and lived there until 1993 when it burned down in the Malibu fire. That fire started pretty far away from our area, and so I went to work that morning. I usually leave the house between 6 and 6:15. By 1 o'clock, my house was gone. The winds had changed and blew into the area, and all I was left with, excuse me, was the clothes that I had on my back. I lost the whole history of my previous life prior to that day. So after fighting for a few years with the insurance company, I rebuilt the house on the same piece of property, hopefully fireproof. And in 2007, we had a fire that was the same pattern. So I got on the telephone that morning and called the fire department and begged them for help. And there are 3 homes that live in the canyon that I live in, which is off Rambla Pacifico. And they immediately sent 3 fire engines to our 3 pieces of property. If this is cut off, we don't have telephone to call anybody. We're basically separated from the whole world, the outside world. My feeling is they have science today to provide wires that are safe and should be protected, and I think that Edison Company should spend the money to expedite, as Laura said, and not wait 3 years to get all this work done. They should expedite this so that we can be protected and not be isolated from the whole world. We can't make any contact with anybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Scott Dietrich, you are next. And Scott will be followed by Beth Burnham. So Beth, get in the ready position.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members, and thank you, Diane and Bob, for finally admitting that Edison's above-ground delivery system is unable to meet the needs of the communities that you serve. I cannot understand why Edison is married to this technology that started in the West in 1861 and prior to the days of the Pony Express, but you seem to do it. I know that shutting off the power when it's needed the most is just a response to Edison's legal exposure from the failure of your equipment in recent fires and during the annual Santa Ana winds. Unfortunately, this is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. Shutting off the power will have an impact on our citizens. The city's emergency notification system will become inoperative. Citizens will no longer be notified through radio and television, nor will they be able to see how a fire is progressing as they watch television. The lack of notification will cause people to flee at the last moment, forcing them to leave pets and valuables behind. And the reason for this is if you're on the wrong side of a canyon, the downwind side, you might not see the fire coming. In 2007, in our neighborhood, people on one side of the canyon couldn't see the fire coming all the way across from Malibu Canyon. They didn't even know there was a fire there, and that's what's going to happen. The most vulnerable people are often going to be the ones that will find out last, and they will die. People will be unable to make 911 calls for fire, accidents, or medical emergencies. And what this means is our firefighters won't be notified of a fire when it's still small, when it can best be controlled, and therefore it will spread. No power means no water. The pumps bringing water uphill to the storage tanks will not operate without power. The firemen might as well take the day off. And many of us in Malibu and Topanga work at home. There were 27 red flag days last year. There was perhaps, in my house, 15 days that were of enough wind to cause you to turn it off. And if I'm out of work for 15 days with no pay, that is a disaster in itself. The traffic signals out on PCH means mutual aid equipment won't reach a fire in a timely manner. It's obvious that this proposal is an attempt to limit legal exposure since the legislature would not do so recently. Unfortunately, I think instead it will increase Edison's liability. But that's the negatives. As Assessor Payne was talking about making improvements during a crisis, talking about green screen. You guys aren't even at the green screen computer level. You know, you're back in the past, in the days of the Stagecoach and Pony Express, and the improvements you're suggesting are like putting rubber tires on a stagecoach. And it's silly. We have the opportunity to use this crisis to advance to the 21st century, and that means undergrounding. And Edison fights us all the way on undergrounding. We know that the wires, the transformers, the poles are unsafe during high winds. They can't withstand it. Why not underground? Undergrounding, yes, is expensive. We all know that. but what is the cost of fighting these huge fires? What is the cost to the loss of life? What is the cost from the property damage? Just reducing one's insurance bill if we underground and eliminate what some say in the hillside areas is up to 50% of the fires that are caused by, these power poles and the wires blowing up. So I urge the City Council to take action, if necessary, to file legal action against Edison and the CPUC, that this is unacceptable. It puts us all at risk, and people are going to die as a result, and that's unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Beth Burnham, you are next, Beth. You'll be followed by Linda Aramita, then Joseph White, then Enid Zaslow.
Thank you. I'm speaking tonight as co-president of the Fire Safe Council in Topanga and as a neighborhood network coordinator for the Topanga Coalition for Emergency Preparedness, TCEP. I'm wearing my flame shirt for a reason tonight, to show solidarity with Malibu and with the many other Santa Monica mountain communities affected by this proactive power shutdown plan of Edison on red flag days. This is as poorly a thought out plan as I have ever seen. Like Malibu, in Topanga, we have spent the last 25 years building communication networks for fire emergency notification. Edison just doesn't seem to understand, but in the mountains, without power, none of these will work. No landlines. We've got Fios. We don't have copper lines anymore. No internet, no cell phones, because we get our cell phone service over Wi-Fi extenders over our internet. So we have nothing to communicate from. I was laughing when they said they were going to call us to see if they could turn the power back on. It was like, how are they going to reach us? We'll also be without the ability to call 911 for the most common occurrences that happen every day. For all of us that look at Pulse Point every day, we know that it's auto accidents and it's medical emergencies that our fire department responds to. It's not fires. And those will be going on at the exact same rate through these conditions of red flag. So in 2017, there were almost 30 red flag days. I think we're going to be on a permanent PSPS mode. That's outrageous. 48-hour notification in advance of a weather event that they're going to go check on. So fires start for many reasons. Power-related causes are only one of the causes. Without electricity, we'll be no different than the community of Santa Rosa last fall, where people first learned that there was a fire when they were awakened by their smoke detectors going off in their bedrooms. That is too late. But that's what Edison is unnecessarily creating. In a fire, without electricity, we will all go up in flames. This is just about Edison wanting to reduce their own liability. It's not about our safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Linda, you are next. And I know you want to, but it's unnecessary to applause. Linda, you'll be followed by Joseph White and then Beth Lucas.
Hi, I'm Linda Aramita. I am the Forestry Education Manager and Lead Certified Arborist for Tree People. And I am here today because I heard that Edison was going to be giving a presentation. Thank you. And I didn't quite know the context of what was going to be presented. But what I'm here to talk about is that, as Beth mentioned, there are many reasons why wildfires happen. And the whole city of Malibu, as was shown earlier, is in the high fire risk area. And there is a term called the wildland-urban interface, or the WUI, and that is the areas where we're finding the most incidents of fire. But the whole city of Malibu is that. And I am here just to say how glad I am that you're being proactive and looking for ways to make your city more fire resilient. And Tree People has worked for many years in the Santa Monica Mountains doing restoration work, whether that is removing the flash fuels, the invasive species, replanting vegetation that are more fire resilient. And we are looking forward to either working with Edison, Southern California Edison, working with Malibu, working with the agencies that work in your area, whether it's the state parks, the Resource Conservation District for the Santa Monica Mountains, to do work in the area to educate the public on better ways to make their personal properties more fire resilient. And starting from the home and working outward seems to be the best method to make homes more fireproof, instead of trying to alter the whole wildland that you have. I mean, you can't go in and change all of the chaparral that are in the hills, but if you can make your home more fire resilient, that will help greatly. So I'm just here to say thank you for listening, and thank you to all of you who are very active in your community and speaking up when you know that more education needs to happen and that we need to be more safe. And you have opportunities to educate the public so that we can look for escape routes, for one thing, the gentleman that was speaking about Topanga. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Linda. Joseph, you are next, and Joseph will be followed by Enid before Beth Lucas. I forgot about Enid.
Hi, I represent the Lower Las Flores Mesa Homeowners Association, as well as Ernie Farhat, who represents the Upper Las Flores Homeowners Association. Between us, we have about 45 homeowners. You're probably aware that in 1993, almost the entire neighborhood was burned down. A number of these things already been mentioned, so I just want to voice one particular concern, which is the vulnerability of the water pumps. That will be the only way we'll get fire suppression in our neighborhoods. I have seen no plan from Southern California Edison and or the Water District to provide any sort of emergency generation in our neighborhoods. So that's one thing we would definitely like the council to address. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. And Enid, you are next. Enid will be followed by Beth Lucas.
I've been a resident of Malibu for close to 40 years. And we moved here because it was so beautiful. And there was a fire hydrant on my street. And I knew that if ever there was a fire, it would be taken care of. In addition to that, there was a fire station about a mile away. Well, it didn't happen because in 1993, a power pole came down on our street. And the fire was coming from, I think, over from Calabasas over the canyon to us. Our street was completely cut off. Nobody could get in, nobody could get out. Pacific Coast Highway had fire engines all along the highway. They couldn't get into our canyons because they couldn't get into our streets. The fire burned. My husband and some other men up there put all of the elderly in the swimming pools. Some of the people went down the side of the street, and all the rest of them were left on Las Flores Canyon and Cirque's Way. The fire was burning like crazy, and they turned off the electricity. We had no way of getting any water. One of the neighbors had a fire, it was like a fire hose, and they attached it to the swimming pool to get some of the water out. We were just lucky because one lone fire truck came in, I think it was a two-seater, coming up the hill and helped push the pole away so that it could get up to us and all the people could get into their cars that were soaked from the water from the swimming pool and could get down to the bottom of Pacific Coast Highway. We had no help. We had nothing because Edison turned off the power. This can happen over and over again, I believe, because we're canyon people. We cannot get out like normal people. We have to come down our street to Pacific Coast Highway. And I think that Edison's idea of, with charts and graphs, had no idea about people that were suffering and hurting and needed their electricity in order to live, basically. Finally, our people got down and our whole entire area, all of the houses were burned, except one, which was ours. And we were so forever grateful. So we were a station for the fire department and everybody else to try to clean up the area. We can't let it happen again. We can't turn off the power.
Thank you, Enid.
You're welcome.
Beth, you are next. Beth will be followed by Craig Hill, and Craig will be followed by E. Barry Haldeman, and then Hans Lotz.
Okay, I'm Beth Lucas, and I'm representing the Lower Las Flores Mesa Property Owners Association as well. Joe and Enid are my neighbors, and I also have been given some extra time from other members of the community here in Malibu, as well as Topanga, our neighbor. Okay, so first of all, something really struck me when Bob from Edison referred to shutting off the power as being a major disruption. This is more than a major disruption. This is a public health threat. SCE absolutely should not move forward with this planned power shutoff plan. It is not something that is going to provide safety in any way. It is dangerous, it is negligent, it is ill-conceived, and people will die. Our community will live in constant fear when these shutoffs occur. And I can tell you, living here for the past 20 years, I get very nervous when the Santa Ana winds blow. I'm a single parent. I have 2 children, 2 teenagers, one of which is a cancer survivor. So I was really struck by the first comment and speaker that was made tonight. So obviously, I want to keep my family safe, as does everybody. Think about this scenario. They've gone through their checklists and their graphs, and they've made their phone calls, and they've done their 48 hours and their 24 hours, and they shut off the power. Well, then what happens? Well, 90% of fires do not start by power lines going down. They start by campfires, as the Skirball fire started. They start by arson, the Holy Fire, which just started by arson. Burning of debris, discarded cigarettes, etc. It goes on. And there's lightning. We do have that occasionally in Southern California. And there's also sparks from vehicles. So if a fire starts for one of these reasons, we are now in a situation where we have a fire and we have no electricity. This is just a recipe for disaster, and it will cause nothing but death and destruction. So in my little community, no fire means no power to pump water to the tanks. And we have one road in and out of our community for our little 3 streets. So do we really want our firemen to have to come into, these brave firemen to come into a street that has an old and inadequate tank to begin with, but that's another issue. But that tank will very quickly run out of water. There will be no water to fight the fire. And again, there's been no discussion about how that issue will be addressed. There will be no power, as has been said many times before, so I won't go over it in too much detail, but there's just gonna be no power for any communications. No cells, no landlines exist anymore. We will have no way to communicate. So if one of these fires starts, what are we to do? It's gonna be a disaster for our city. So again, I think it's very dangerous and legally negligent for SCE to intentionally put communities and our emergency personnel and emergency responders at risk. And do they seriously expect all of us to get ham radios and generators? Are we living in the dark ages? We need to come into the current situation and century and just be proactive about the technology that's available to us today. So SCE thinks that this is going to prevent lawsuits. That's actually laughable. There will be so many more lawsuits because of you taking this action. It's ludicrous. So this plan has the potential to cause injury, death, destruction, and you think you will not have more lawsuits. Again, there will be more lawsuits. SCE, shame on you. That's all I have to say. Shame on you. You should do your job. You are starting to do your job with the solidifying of the poles. Well, let's do more of that. Let's put more of those concrete poles in. And anything else that you need to do to solidify your infrastructure and to underground the wires. Yes, I realize this is expensive, but there is an extraordinarily high cost of fighting wildfires. There's an extraordinarily high cost of the damage to property, the damage and destruction. And what about the cost of the lives of the people who will die? And I hope you're listening. People will die because of this abomination of a plan. So again, I think that there's going to be a significant amount of additional lawsuits due to this plan. There's other things Edison could do more of too, such as the brush clearance around all of the poles. And also, I think that they should collaborate and work with the fire departments and other forestry agencies to do more in the area of proactive forest management and wildland management. There's been a lot of talk about that with all of the fires, not just in California, but throughout the West, that we need to do a better job of wildland management. So they should be putting their efforts into that instead of putting into place this plan. I listened to this, the 48-hour notice, the 24-hour notice. Well, who is going to suffer from this? Not Edison until the lawsuits hit, because again, I want to emphasize there will be lawsuits. I'm not litigious, but I'll be the first one to sue you if anything happens to me or my kids or my property. So again, you're basically saying, okay, we're going to turn off the power, we're passing the buck. So now the city has to deal with this. The city has to figure it out. The people have to figure it out. Everybody better have gotten their generators. It's not fair. And it is, again, it is completely negligent. And you're going to require, well, basically you're going to create mass chaos. You're going to require everybody else to jump through hoops because you're trying to avoid lawsuits. Again, I want to emphasize, you are not avoiding lawsuits. As one of my elderly neighbors who was not able to make it here tonight said, I lived through the '93 fire. This person has nightmares from the fire. They have PTSD from the fire. They are fearful anytime Santa Ana winds blow. And I've got to tell you, I feel the same way. When the Santa Ana winds blow, I pray that my electricity won't go out. And my kids pray that too. And now Edison is going to be turning it off. If you move forward with this plan, people will die. If you move forward with this plan, there will be more lawsuits. So if that's what you're trying to avoid, which is what it appears, it is not going to work. Thank you. And thank you, all of you sitting up here, for your support.
Thanks, Beth. Craig Hill, and Craig, you will be followed by E. Barry Haldeman, who will be followed by Hans Lotz.
Good evening, council members, staff. I echo a lot of the comments that have been made already. I think it would be prudent to try to nip this in the bud by going straight to the CPUC now. Maybe you need to hire some technical expertise, maybe some legal specialized expertise, and deal with this at that level. Otherwise, this is going to go on for a long time. We've already paid for the hardening. They're only talking about 4,000 miles that they're doing. That's a drop in the bucket compared to all of their service area. If we have this plan, thousands of generators will come on in this town because people can afford it. We've got the $16.23 billion worth of property that we just heard about tonight. And a lot of generators will be coming on, operated by inexperienced operators. That's going to be fire hazards in and of itself, noise pollution, et cetera. When the power comes back on, there will be more electrical hazards because the people that hook those up will probably have ad hoc or unpermitted transfer switches with their generators. That can create more electrical issues. So this whole proposal is kind of a chaos multiplier. It's a sledgehammer where what you need is a scalpel. You need things like microgrids and more backup energy at the key places like the water tanks above Big Rock where we can't fight a fire if we don't have electricity there. I know I will be staying in the next fire with my respirator and my fire hose, and I will be on my roof because the fire department has told us that on our little road, they're likely not to come up there. It's not safe. So that's the only way to save my house. If we don't have water up the hill, then people like me are, like other people have said, in real jeopardy up there. So just to wrap up, this brings to mind the Republican proposal to revamp health insurance, where they're saying, we're just going to cut it off and then we'll replace it later. Well, we need to think ahead and figure out what is the actual problem here, how do we address it, and it seems to me that the solution doesn't come from Edison in the first place. You take it to the PUC and figure out how to really make it work. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. E. Barry Haldeman, followed by Hans Lotz, and then followed by David Cranston.
Thank you. A lot has been said tonight that I won't repeat, but I think de-energize is a wonderful euphemism for just turning off the power. I think obviously and it started with Lou Lamont, they're really attempting to shift the liability to us. Everybody get a generator and it'll be just fine. But they have a responsibility to supply power to us, and they've taken on that responsibility, and while shifting the responsibility to us may make their shareholders happy, it doesn't take care of their customers. What I would like to propose is also that we agendize this issue so that staff can study it and give us some real facts about what's going on here from our perspective. The thing that concerns me the most is the control of the power switch is totally in the control of Edison. They will decide whether we have power or not. We have nothing to say about it, and that's just wrong. There's no checks and balances. There's nothing going on here that would prevent them just, because they're nervous, turning it off. What we really should be looking at is what are the practices of Edison that they're so afraid of? What are they doing now that could cause the fires? And why don't we correct those things and have an outside agency do that? So, and also if the power goes off, we know a lot of people will try to get out of Malibu, and it'll be mass hysteria. So I just recommend that we do whatever we can to prevent this plan, that we take over control of this liability situation ourselves, and don't let Edison make the total decision on the lives of everybody in Malibu. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hans, you are next. And Hans, you got 7 minutes, followed by David Cranston.
I believe I have 8. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Since you challenged me, let's see. Karen Farrar, are you here? Karen? Karen's here. Roger? Roger's here. Sherman? Hi, Sherman.
That's not kosher.
That's why I asked.
Graham Clifford? Graham. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 3.
I was told 8 over there, but I'll do it in 7, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We'll give you 8. We'll give you 8, Hans. Considering how much you've done on this thing, you got 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Thanks,
and
man.
I do appreciate your courtesy on this. And thank you very much to the mayor and council and to our city manager for writing a very strong letter to the California Public Utilities Commission on this. This is energy for what's ahead. We can tell you what's ahead. Chaos, confusion, death, and injury as a direct result of the dog and pony show that you just heard. Under that new regulation that got approved in the dark of night up in San Francisco, they're required to come here and consult with you. Did that sound like you were consulted with, or did that sound like you were mansplained, what the policy already is? Edison is calling this the PSPS. What it is, it's the Southern California Edison Cut and Run program. They're going to cut the power and run from their responsibility. What is their responsibility? This is small. It's small print. I'm sorry. California Public Utilities Code, Section 451 says, every public utility shall furnish and maintain adequate, efficient, just, and reasonable service necessary to promote the safety and health of its customers. A power line that has to be shut off when the winds are too strong for their shareholders to bear the risk is not safe and it is not reliable. No utility shall put some of its customers in a lesser privilege than others. We in Malibu are paying for uninterrupted power, and we're getting uninterrupted power now. More state law. The state, the commission, must, under the law, seek the participation of those who are likely to be affected, including those who are potentially subject to a decision in any proceeding. Were we consulted before this happened? Did they come to us and say, we're making comments on this, that this rule is coming? Did they come to us and say, what do you guys think about that in the city of Malibu? No. They kept quiet and let this secret proceeding go on in San Francisco. The commission must provide, I'm reading state law, the commission must provide proposed regulations for public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, SRB 8, which is this regulation, was changed twice after it was put out for public comment, and the public wasn't told that it was changed. How was it changed? The utility companies came and convinced the state to remove the requirement that these outages be mitigated. In San Diego, the plan that was approved for a few backcountry ranches was that the San Diego Gas and Electric Company had to mitigate the outages. They had to go out and they gave the ranchers generators for their pumps. They gave the generator the little one-room schoolhouse in White, California, so that when the San Diego Gas and Electric power went out, the schoolhouse still had power. Secretly, these people went to the state and removed the word mitigate. There is no mitigation. When the power goes out, each cell phone company in Malibu has several dozen nodes. They don't use big towers in Malibu. They use little nodes that are up on power lines. Each of the 5 cell companies has dozens of those. All they're going to do is communicate. They're going to go and talk about that. They need a generator on every single one of those nodes, and that is no way that they can do that. Now, here's what we're talking about. We need your help. I didn't put this in my action, and I should have. I didn't have enough time. CEQA. This is a CEQA project. Under CEQA, as Craig Hill just said, they are going to put hundreds of generators online in Malibu, creating fire dangers, air pollution, AB 32 problems, and smog. That is a CEQA impact. They did not do a CEQA study before this happened, and there we are ripe for a challenge from the city of Malibu. What are the impacts on us? Got 4 minutes left. TV and radio reporters. I used to be an assignment editor for 30 years in Channel 5. You know what's going to happen? They're going to put out this notice that Malibu's blacked out. I'm going to send a live truck out there. And the reporter's going to be standing on Canaan Doom Road with the wind going by and saying, Malibu's afraid because the power's out, and they don't have a way to call 911. What do you think that's going to do for every arsonist in Los Angeles County? Remember the 2007 fire when I had a reporter standing in Corral Canyon Road saying this is dangerous? Some punks from LA drove out there, bought some logs, and kicked burning logs off of a cliff, and we lost houses over there. That's what they're going to leave us. They're going to leave us sitting ducks. On-site wastewater treatment centers. No one's talked about our sewers, which require the individual sites that Craig George has got all over town that work great if there's electricity. What happens if the electricity on those goes out for 6 days? Is that stuff going to congeal? All landlines will die, all of them. Even the ones that still have copper to the central operating systems, they still have wireless switches and wireless phones. They're all going to be dead. Cell phones will all be dead. There's dozens of cell phone towers. KBUU will be off the air. We don't have a generator. They're supposed to consult with us, too. They didn't do that. The traffic lights will go out. The traffic lights that have batteries, the batteries last 1 to 3 hours. They're talking about 2-day outages followed by 4 days to inspect the lines. If the school district gets a notice that it's possible that the power will go out, they're going to have to cancel classes. They've already said that because they can't bring their employees in safely and run their school buses and bring their kids in safely if PCH is congealed. Craig touched on the issue of decreased electrical power, meaning the danger with people self-fueling Honda generators. You know, when a Honda generator is hot, you know what happens if you put gasoline into it and aren't very, very careful? People are going to cause fires. People are going to asphyxiate themselves. People are going to light barbecue fires to cook because they're hungry, and there's going to be barbecue fires during Santa Ana winds. None of this has been considered. And Malibu's rich. We're all going to put in natural gas-fired generators. Oh boy, if all those generators fire up Is there enough capacity on the gas main to fire them all? Probably not. And that means the pilot lights all over town are going to be going out. Is there enough gas at Aliso Canyon, now that that doesn't exist, for the Southern California Gas Company to fire all these generators up in western LA County? The power companies went to the Utilities Commission and had the gall to tell them that mitigation wasn't necessary because, and I quote, all the public facilities that need emergency generators already have emergency generators. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a list. All those things in red of emergency facilities in Malibu that do not have generators. 75% of the Frontier customers, 100% of the Charter customers, Southern California Gas compressors. Waterworks District 29 only has one generator at Bluffs Park. Gas stations, people need gasoline, they'll be out. KBUU radio will be off the air. 22 Caltrans traffic lights. Urgent care, the vet center, all the cell phones, all the schools. The preschools will have no power. What are they going to do? They haven't been affected. What's Edison going to do? Ladies and gentlemen, that's their earnings on revenue and their profit for the last 10 years. They make 10 to 12% profit every year. It's guaranteed. If you go to their bonds, they get a 10 to 14% return on equity on the bond market. That's how much money they are taking from us, and they're supposed to already be hardening these lines. You know, the state legislature asked me once, I was sitting on a panel in Altadena, a state senator asked the panel, where's all the money going? Aren't we already paying for these lines to be hardened? And the guy from the CPUC who was sitting right next to me said, we don't even know where they're spending it. We don't have a clue if the money that we're already paying to harden these lines is being spent the way it's supposed to be. I'll hurry very much. This is Southern California Edison PSPS spin. Southern California Edison and the CPUC do not, under the plain language of the law, they do not have the right to cut power because that's not safe and it's not reliable. Southern California Edison's service equipment in this area has already been found several times by the state to be inadequate to serve Malibu safely. And the current rule, before this was passed, and I'm going to hurry, was that Southern California Edison had to maintain power lines that could withstand a 92-mile-an-hour wind gust for 3 seconds, energized lines. The new rule has been changed because that rule's not in effect anymore. Now it's whatever they think they can get away with. And in conclusion, we need your help. There is a way the city can bail us out on this. I filed this application with the CPUC. That means we have standing to file a lawsuit. If we didn't have this application that I filed, we wouldn't. But now I do have standing, and that person right there can write great appellate briefs. I've seen them. She's terrific at it.
Thank you, Hans. Appreciate that.
And we need your help. Thank you,
Hans.
ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your help.
David Cranston. David will be followed by Danusha Larson and then Georgia Goldfarb.
Thank you, Mayor Mullen and council members. I'm David Cranston, a resident of the city of Malibu. I urge the city to take whatever legal action it can to enjoin the SEE's ill-conceived and ill-advised plan. The SCE is callously using Malibu and other communities as a pawn in a larger political fight over their liability, and we should fight back. And they do so at grave risk to us. I want to elaborate on a couple of the points that were raised earlier. The SCE's own notice sent out to residents urged or at least suggested to residents to go out and buy a generator. I mean, just think about what's going to happen. First, you have to get fuel for your generator. And these are gasoline-powered generators, unless you're going to have a natural gas one. And you need to have enough gasoline to power it for their extended outages. So the average generator uses about 20 gallons per 24 hours. So how much gasoline are you going to need to have? Maybe 100 gallons, 120 gallons. And where is it going to be stored? Well, it has to be stored outside. It has to be vented. And so it's going to be sitting in containers, vented containers, outdoors, in the heat, in the high heat. Vented, meaning the vapors are going to be escaping from the storage containers. Now think about that in the context of a Santa Ana wind. You're going to have wind-blown embers that land anywhere near those tanks. You're going to have a firebomb waiting to happen. When your fire crews show up, Mayor Mullen, to protect the homes with these hundreds of gallons of gasoline stored out back in plastic containers, what are they going to do when they see that firebomb waiting to happen? Are they going to protect the home? Are they going to be at grave risk because of the actions of the SCE? We have to prevent this from happening. We have to do it now because folks are already going to be preparing for this plan by stocking up in gasoline and these generators. What's going to happen in the middle of the night when an outage occurs or an outage is announced to happen? You're going to have folks running out to their generator, trying to read their manual in the middle of the night, trying to load it up with gasoline in the high wind and the high temperatures. You know, what could go wrong? Well, what will happen is we're going to have more fires. I think this plan actually creates a higher fire risk than what SCE is trying to prevent. And I think this decision by the PUC is unlawful. The decision is predicated on their conclusion that the statute gives them this authority. And the statutes that they rely upon are some of the ones that were put up on the screen by the prior speaker, which is basically that the utilities are obligated to provide electricity safely. What the utilities have essentially conceded is they can't do it safely with the existing poles. They have to be rated at 91 miles per hour wind load. They aren't. And they've installed these poles knowing about the fire risk, knowing that we get winds that are high constantly, and they are installed poles that don't meet the PUC's requirements.
Thank you, David. Danusha, you are next, followed by Georgia Goldfarb, and then Michael Beagley.
I'm Danusha Larson, and I live in Malibu Park. I live just off of Bush, which is a corridor for Santa Ana's. And I was at the last meeting where the SoCal Edison people were there, and at length afterwards spoke with them, grilled them. And they're really nice people. They really are nice people. Unfortunately, the plan that they have proposed, and I know that they believe in it, but it's very obvious that they do not live in fire areas. They don't know the risks and how on a moment's notice we have to be ready to go. My box of important papers are by the door nonstop because I want to be able to get out with my stuff. They don't understand. We don't have 48 hours to indulge ourselves to be notified to have our power off. What the problem is that they are putting us as a cookie cutter plan for this entire project. They need to realize there are certain areas that don't qualify for their plan as they're putting it into effect. I think that it would be better if, use of time and money if they did place the power lines underground. I believe that the city of, and which we found out last meeting, that the city of Malibu does get some money allocated to put power lines underground, but we don't know where those power lines are going underground every year. And that's a question that comes up to the city council. I'd like to find out where that money does go. Why not partner with the money instead of spending it for this bureaucracy? Let Southern Cal Edison partner with the city of Malibu and its residents to fund putting the power lines underground. I know it's like $600 million to put all the power lines on. Do it section by section, year by year. Let's get it all underground, but start with areas that are most affected. Those are the type of things that I'm considering as the best solutions for this. One thing that came out of the conversation that I did have with these guys, and it's something that I'd like to propose to you guys to consider if it's not already, is to ban metallic balloons. They say that it's a huge fire risk. It causes so many problems. We've done away with straws and styrofoam. Let's do away with these things that actually can cause fires, power outages, and that's a simple solution. I don't think anybody would have it. So do we have your vote for going forward with that? Perfect, okay. Well, that's it. I just wanted to make sure. Oh, by the way, I do have to say, we got a thing that San Diego is putting their power lines underground. That's what they're going to be doing. So I think it's a good plan for us to do too. Let's consider that aspect. Thank you.
Thank you, Danusha. Georgia, you are next. Georgia will be followed by Michael Beagley, who will be followed by Lloyd Ahern.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. I have to say I agree with pretty much everything everybody said, and I think it's been a profound discussion on the part of the public and the council. I strongly oppose Edison. Oh, and I have a couple of extra minutes. I strongly oppose Edison's plan for outages. Their poorly devised plan presents a high level of risk for many in our community. As we know,
I only have one speaker slip for you.
Oh, this gentleman said that he would give me
Steve? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Okay.
Steve is
Thanks.
a gentleman.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry. As we know, high fire hazard conditions can last for days and will only become longer and more frequent with climate change. It is irresponsible to shut off all ability to communicate at various times over some 400 square miles, the Santa Monicas, and possibly some 100,000 people without careful planning, coordination, and testing for secure mechanisms for communication, electrical supply to water pumps, and traffic lights at minimum. SCE's plan was driven not by careful planning with fire agencies and residents to minimize fire danger, but by concern about their liability. With their increased lobbying expenditures this year, they attempted to pass SB 901, thankfully tabled, but were able to promote new PUC directives regarding these shutoffs. The solution to the wildfire crisis is not to desperately seek various ways of funding Edison's costs related to the disaster, but to ameliorate the causes of these fires. Edison does not discuss burying their wires, but that is the obvious answer to both their liability and the actual hazard from arcing and down power lines and transformers. The city has rightfully opposed their plan. I agree. Here are some of my concerns, and these are related for the next few items to risk. The frequency and risk assessment for projected blackouts by Edison may be inaccurate. Edison has stated that the expected frequency of blackouts is 2 to 10 per year in their entire service area. However, much of the 50,000 square mile SCE area has either limited risk of fire from sparking and downed wires or very low population. Clearly, the highest risk will be concentrated in wildland, mountainous areas adjacent to cities like the Santa Monica Mountains. The specific risk of blackout for the Santa Monica Mountains must be calculated, especially when this risk is used to develop a wildfire plan. In addition, the stated frequency of blackouts is based on historical data, while a need for blackout intervention, as evidenced by the new frequency and spread of wildfires for the future, has not been incorporated into these projections. That is, they have no idea how often and how long these blackouts will occur. Generalizability. SCE has tested the blackout intervention twice, once in Idlewild in December 2017, population 3,800, and another that wasn't discussed. Generalizing the success of this one experience is not applicable to the Santa Monica Mountains considering the area covered, total population, and population density. That's it for risk. Communications, which is kind of very similar to what other people have said. Without electricity, communications will not be available to either residents or first responders regarding fire, hazard, wind, road conditions, evacuation information in the most critical areas. How will we learn of the advice from fire, police, and weather agencies? How will they themselves communicate and coordinate services? The situation can change frequently and will inform our decision to stay, go, and where to go. As has been made abundantly clear in the fires in Northern California, it is ridiculous to think that in a firestorm, the entire populace will somehow individually receive timely emergency information, as Edison has previously suggested. Water supply would be limited. We've already talked about that. Even without fire, even without fire, 1 to 3 gallons of water per person per day is required for basic needs under a prolonged blackout. Can I just, one last paragraph?
One last paragraph.
Yeah. What we need is not a reactive discussion based on SCE business and shareholder needs, but a thoughtful discussion and plan on how to collectively best survive these challenging conditions. This should be the beginning of these discussions, not the end. Burying the wires, however, could be both the beginning and end.
Thank you, Georgia.
Thanks,
Michael Beagley, you're next, followed by, am I pronouncing that properly? Excuse me. Mr. Beagley.
First, I'd like to thank Jefferson, Laura, Riva, Christy, and the Malibu Times for basically giving me an MBA in Malibu politics on Friday at the candidate forum. It was very illuminating, so thank you. Today, I wish to communicate my experience on Thursday, August 23rd, between 10:15 and 10:45 while running an errand in Malibu. I was witness to the disruptions on PCH caused by a car club and what has been described as fake police as they made their way from Malibu to Monterey for a car show. The cars totaled approximately 100 and were high performance, such as Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and were followed by at least 10 fake police, I would say. I followed the group beginning at Los Tunas Beach and continued through Malibu to the Ventura line, witnessing what appeared to be fake police who were driving all over PCH like they were real policemen attending to an emergency. I called 911 and spoke to the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department listened to my concerns, and the conversation ended. Soon thereafter, at Carbon Beach, I realized these were definitely fake police and saw them carrying what appeared to be semi-automatic pistols, handcuffs, and other police paraphernalia. The fake police blocked the intersection of PCH and Webb Way, and a fake policeman directed traffic while off his motorcycle. I pulled up next to him and asked him what he was doing. He instructed me to move on, but I accomplished my goal, which was to observe his uniform and get a better idea of what these fake police were. Indeed, they had patches on their identical uniforms that said officer, and they utilized what I am familiar with as police emergency lights on their motorcycle. Given my concerns of having fake police in Malibu, I made the decision to follow the group. They continued through Malibu, traveling north at a high rate of speed, where I followed after calling 911 again, and this time was connected to the California Highway Patrol. I stayed on the phone with CHP for approximately 15 miles and provided them license plate numbers of the fake police. In real time, they came back and advised me that none of the motorcycles were actual police vehicles. Subsequent to these events, I first called Officer Royal and the watch commander. I've received no call back from either. On Friday, I read a news report that Officer Tang of the CHP was requesting any photos or dashboard camera videos. Fortunately, I took photos from my phone of the incident while driving, and Officer Tang has been communicating. I did not witness any sheriff's deputies or CHP officers respond to the incident. I'd just like to say, Susan, our public safety person, had a test the other day, and some people criticized her because it didn't go perfect. Well, that's why you have tests, because things don't always go perfect. Nobody was hurt in this incident, thank God, and I'd just like to look at this as a test, and let's see what we can do to make it better. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Lloyd Ahern, followed by Damian Sandow and Sherman Bacon.
Great answer.
Are you going to talk, or did you give your minutes to somebody else? Okay.
Okay, City Council, good evening. Do you guys have all these pictures and everything else? Okay, I just had a talk with Lieutenant Royal earlier when I first came in, and I gave him all of Leland Tang's emails, so he was aware of them. So what Michael is talking about is what I've been saying for a long time. We need more police on Pacific Coast Highway. He had from Los Tunas Beach to Ventura County line on the phone with the CHP the whole time. How we got off of the frequency of the sheriffs, nobody quite knows. Maybe I hope Lieutenant Royal will come in here. But we have to have more police on Pacific Coast Highway. This shift that we have from Lost Hills to here, it takes over the hill. Tonight, Riva, the Malibu Canyon was closed, for an hour, 2 hours? So, I mean, if we got to have more people here, because what's happening is it's like bare minimum. If he can go 35, 40, 50 minutes talking and no police show up, this is Emily Shane all over again. This is from Topanga Canyon to Heather Cliff. There was 4 continuous 911 calls, and that got no policeman ever showed up. So we've got to get more police on PCH. If you'll examine these emails from Officer Tang, he is hell-bent. In fact, according to Officer Royal just a little while ago, they've actually shut these people down already because they know they were such an outlaw group. But we got to do something. I mean, we can't accept this. We never thought it could happen again after Emily, and as he says, we're just lucky. nothing bad happened. But these guys come into our town, take it over. They have 100 Maseratis and Ferraris and stuff like that, and they think they own us because they think they own us. So we got to do something. Thanks.
Thank you, Lloyd. Lloyd is followed by Damian Sandow. Oh, okay. And Sherman Bacon.
To notice the shirt. This is for you. Okay. So I'm going to sound really upset and cross. Don't take it any personally, but this is the way it's going to be. Oh my God, what is the matter with us? Here we are talking about fires and disaster preparedness, and now we're getting rid of the one and only, since 1937, Malibu Towing, with the drivers who know every, again, nook and cranny. And mentioned in the 2007 fire, Malibu Towing between Latigo Canyon and Corral removed 17 vehicles that were blocking the trucks. And listen, I know that we bailed out the Malibu Lumberyard. And for all those people who are size 0, I think it's great. But for the rest of us, I would rather have a tow truck. I would rather know that if there's a big accident on the highway, first comes the sheriffs, great. Second, the ambulances, uh-oh. But third, Malibu Towing, so that our businesses stay open, that our highways stay open. How is it that we can be a city for people with size 0 and we don't have tow trucks? And right now we're talking about the most important thing, disaster preparedness. How is it that we can't rezone somehow to get Malibu Towing's boons or their butts back in Malibu? We're gone. After this weekend, we're in Oxnard. You want to talk about time? We have 7 trucks. But if there's an accident or a fire and people are stuck in the canyons, I'm up Decker Canyon, you understand what happens. I mean, you don't understand how difficult it is to have a small business in Malibu. And let me tell you, Malibu Towing, as myself, we're a small business. And trust me, as I said before, Malibu Towing isn't here because they're making a lot of money between AAA and Ferraris that break down once in a while. Malibu Towing is here because they love this community. They've done heroic things for this community. Isn't it about time that we did something heroic as first responders after the sheriffs and the fire department and the ambulance? We're still first responders because they're the one who are picking up the pieces. We are taking care of the highway. I don't want my business or other businesses to suffer because our roads are closed. And now again, I'm being redundant, with us in Oxnard, we're going to be behind times. People are going to get frustrated and angry. But we're going to tell them, who should they be angry at? Malibu Lumberyard or the city council or for rezoning? I'm asking you, and for the residents, if you really care about disaster preparedness and just being a good neighbor, to please help Malibu Towing find a way to stay back in Malibu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherman. Julie Thomas from American Red Cross. And Julie will be followed by Grant Graves.
Good evening. Thank you so much for letting us speak. I'm Julie Thomas. I'm the Executive Director of the Santa Monica Bay chapter of the American Red Cross. And I'm here because this seems like the right time to be talking about disaster preparedness. And that is something that the Red Cross is dedicated to and has a lot of different programs that we can offer the community to provide a level of preparedness. We work on preparedness at all levels. We do programs for seniors. We do them in schools for kids. We do them in homes. And Southern California Edison has been a big partner of ours in this program. They've helped us supply smoke detectors in homes where we go into people's homes, check their smoke detectors and replace them for free. They are a big partner with our entire Prepare LA and Prepare Southern California program. They're an important partner that helps us get our preparedness programs into the community. So I wanted to just mention I have 2 flyers that are in the back, outside in that, on the little table back there, that talk about all of the different programs that we do, and it's important programs that we can provide to give people a much deeper level of resiliency through bringing preparedness programs to the community. And now I'll turn it over to Grant.
Thank you, Julie. We love the Red Cross, and they're part of the emergency response system.
Hi, Mayor Mullen, council members. Jay, I think we've known each other since I was 7. It was 1 o'clock about 25 years ago when I told Carter at Malibu Divers it's time to pack up. And that's when the fire crested the peak of the mountain. And having grown up here, I knew that that was the moment that it was going to burn downhill and we were probably going to have to get the heck out. Maury from the kitchen at La Costa there and I stood in back and watered down the back outbuilding for about 3 hours, and luckily it survived, although our neighbors lost everything. That was honed in my ability to know what to do after running from there to the home of where my mother is still at, was honed by a lifetime of evacuations. We all know that. So the importance of personal preparedness, regardless of policy either way, and we are neutral on that, is that you get ready no matter what, because it can be a fire, an earthquake, a power outage, or any other event that may come up. We're fortunate. I volunteer with CERT. I also volunteer with the American Red Cross. We're partnering and going to be at the Preparedness Expo on September 29th. So we'll have the preparedness brochures and information about classes and education. I recommend that all the citizenry, including those looking at me up there, to get involved in CERT, get involved and be prepared personally. My elderly mother still lives where I grew up, and we have enough water and food and early evacuation plans and spare medications and all the things that I've learned through my actions with the Red Cross to be ready to not be a statistic. So I just wanted to remind, this is a great opportunity for us all to think, regardless of what comes up, because it is unpredictable, that we all get prepared. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. I agree with you. I am CERT trained to the city of Malibu. And now I have the mystery man with no name, but the address is 28401 PCH. Does anybody know who that is? Okay. Andy? Oh, there's no name on it, though. Then you're followed by Jim Palmer, and Norm, you gave your minute away, so I guess you're not going to speak.
Okay, well, we're talking disasters, so the Malibu Lagoon is a disaster today. And I don't know that anybody really knows or cares, or nobody from the city was down there. Jefferson, I didn't see you, but I was down there with the news today. Hundreds of thousands of dead fish, and you know, this could have been avoided. I'm sitting here listening to everybody tonight, and it's reminding me of, you know, SC is like state parks. We came in here, we filled this place. We tried to get you to listen. You ignored us. You said it was out of our hands. People here are now getting, you know, you're getting the word. And, you know, I don't know what we can do about that. You know, I heard Dog and Pony Show. Today, we had Craig Sapp down there, you know, joking about sushi at Nobu, half off. We had, you know, jokes about the birds are having a field day. It's a health hazard down there, and no, I don't see anybody from the city making a public statement on it. You know, you failed miserably with the lagoon, you two, basically. And, you know, I guess it's sort of trivial compared to like a lot of stuff that's being talked about tonight. But the other thing I heard was, you know, capitalizing on a crisis. This is the crisis. This is the I told you so. 8 years ago, I came in here and I had my cardboard thing at 12 o'clock at night screaming at John Seibert because he went with the project guys. And I had the, you know, Jim and called on, you know, the police called on me for it. And it's like, yeah, I told you so. This was going to happen. You know, so what do we do now? Do we get this thing breached? Do we take care of it? Are you guys going to do something? You know, we got him down there saying, we're going to get the test back in a couple of weeks. They're down there. We banned straws, and they're down filling dead fish into heavy gauge plastic bags to take to the dump right now. It's a joke. Talk about a dog and pony show. You know, I look at the lagoon as sort of like the canary in the coal mine of Malibu. You guys, you know, everything's out of your hands if you don't want to deal with it. You know, whether it's the PCH, whether it's a turn lane, whether it's widening the highway, whether it's flawed traffic studies, whether it's flawed EIRs, whether it's anything that, you know, you could do something about, but you choose not to do it. This is something that you need to now go back in and take care of. It's a major disaster. I was down there yesterday, hundreds and hundreds of people walking through there. The smell is insane. I tell everybody you should go down and look at what a disaster that lagoon is right now. Really, I mean, this is what's going to happen to all these things that you guys have gone Measure M, Measure R. All this stuff is going to happen. When people say, this is, I told you it's going to happen, all these things, this is like what is going to happen. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Jim Palmer, you are the last speaker.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here to speak on an agenda item in the next 2 weeks on short-term rentals. We have an election coming up. We have candidates here tonight, myself included, that have been discussing this in public forums. And I think that you should delay the vote on the short-term rentals until the new city council members are elected. I think it is in good practice in governance to have the new city council members, which are discussing this with the voters and the residents now, to delay the vote. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that wraps up our public speakers. And I think we need to take a break. So how about we'll come back in 10 minutes at 8:50.
I just want to thank you. We'll invite to the public. I'll come back and let you know when the public meeting is. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hey, Skylar, can you?
All right. We have concluded communications from the public. We are now on to commission, committee, city manager updates. City manager.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I have a few things I wanted to announce tonight. First of all, the city council meeting that's been scheduled for September 11th has been canceled. So we will not be having a meeting that night. And the second meeting in September, as per the adopted city calendar, will be held on Wednesday, September 26th. And we are going to be starting that meeting at 5 o'clock. And the short-term rental ordinance will be heard that night. There will be information posted on the city's website about this change, as well as information in the local newspaper. So I just want to make sure everybody has that and is not here on September 11th. I wanted to give a quick update. Last week, we sold the bonds that will be used, the proceeds of which will be used towards the acquisition of the 3 vacant properties that the city is buying. And we had a very successful bond sale. It was very reflective of the city's high credit rating, which is a AA+ for the type of bonds that we were selling. We had $23.6 million of bonds available for sale, and our underwriters took over $66 million of orders. So it was incredibly successful. At the end of the day, the city was able to save $2 million over the course of 30 years based on the estimates of what we thought the rates would be versus what it came out after the bond sale. So very happy on that. Thank you, Mr. Haney. We are in escrow, and there is an item on the consent calendar tonight that is one of a couple of the administrative things having to do with the close of escrow, but we expect it to close on September 6th. So more to follow on that. I'd also like to announce that the meals program that will serve our homeless community is set to start up on September 24th at the old Malibu courthouse location. It's going to be a regular program on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of every month. It is something we're doing in coordination with the county, and we'll have some wraparound services there in addition to the meals that are going to be served, and we'll have our social workers from the People Concern and representatives from the St. Joseph Center there. And the city's also requested some other wraparound services from the county, so trying to make it a robust program. An update briefly on the construction that's going on or starting to go on by Caltrans near Corral Beach. Currently, the city has been working with Caltrans to mitigate some of the changes that Caltrans has put into place. They took out most of the parking along PCH on both sides of PCH, and we've requested a redesign of the construction area so that parking can be maintained during the period of construction, which is about 4 months. So hopefully we'll see some changes on that this week, because we are very concerned about the loss of parking there. Just wanted to speak briefly about the Malibu Lagoon. The city has been getting regular updates from California State Parks. We have information posted on the city's website, and it's my understanding from State Parks that the dead fish have been removed, or they're in the process of being removed. That process started yesterday. There were about 2,000 fish is the number that I have been provided with that died, and they believe that is due to warm temperatures in the lagoon. So again, as we get information on that, we are providing that on our website. And the other news that I wanted to make sure everybody has on their calendar is that we will be having a grand opening of the Civic Center wastewater treatment facility on October 5th. That's Friday at 11 o'clock. I know I'm overexcited about the opening of a wastewater facility, but it is the city's largest capital project to date, a $60 million project, and we are completing the project on time and on schedule to meet the mandated deadlines from the regional board. So definitely something to celebrate, and I hope everybody will be able to join us on October 5th. And that concludes my remarks, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Can you address any of the Lloyd Ahern's things he brought up, concerns?
Yes, and I forgot one other very important item, which was I'm supposed to introduce one of our newest staff member, Julian de Anda, who is here tonight. He has sat through all of the public comments. He's our new associate civil engineer, and we're very happy to have him. He's relocated from Northern California and is here to be a great member of our public works staff. So welcome, Julian, and thank you for sitting through long public comments tonight. Yes, Mayor, I'd be happy to answer what I can for Mr. Ahern. My understanding is that the issue was reported to the Sheriff's Department, and the watch commander was the person who received those calls. And since the issue happened, that CHP is handling the investigation, has been in communication with Lieutenant Royal on this, and I'm sure he can answer any other questions, but CHP has followed up with the issue. And I just did want to add that we are starting next, or not we, but the county is, and the Santa Monica College is starting construction on the Santa Monica College facility at the beginning of October. And they're starting to stage for that next month. And that project includes a substation for the Sheriff's Department so that our sheriffs will be located here in Malibu, which will cut down dramatically on the drive time from the Lost Hills station. So it's something, I know it's not an immediate fix, but it's definitely something that addresses that concern of the time to dispatch additional deputies. And as part of those conversations, we can certainly look at over time if we can add more sheriffs within our budget.
Thank you very much. And Lloyd, I think your phone flashlight is on. I can see it in your pocket there. You may run out of battery, and you may have an emergency on the way home. You might need that.
I almost said something to you when you were up there, and then I just thought it was...
Okay, we're now on to council member comments. Lou?
Thank you. Basically, I'll tell you some of the things I've been doing, and rather quickly. I attended a California Contract Cities Association Executive Board meeting. I also attended with REVA, a Coastal Cities Issues Group conference call, which has to do with the League of California Cities and the Coastal Commission. And I attended the 25th anniversary of the Malibu Labor Exchange, and on Saturday, Laura was there as well. And this organization provides a great service for the city. It gives people there a safe space to earn a living. And I wanted to thank all the people like Martin Sheen, Kay Gabbard, and of course Oscar for putting it together, and all the supporters that came and made it such a successful event. It was terrific. I'm going to Fort Worth, Texas at the end of the week for the National League of Cities Federal Advocacy meetings. And I, as well as several other council members, are attending the League of California Cities annual event in Long Beach. But this afternoon, the California Senate passed our rehab reform bill unanimously, AB 3162, and it will go to the governor for signature. And I'll let you know when that happens soon. Thank you all. And I also just wanted to mention, I wanted to thank Assemblymember Laura Friedman for being the author of this bill. And the co-authors in the Assembly were Assemblymember Melissa Melendez and Sharon Quirk Silva. And in the Senate, I wanted to thank these co-authors. Senator Ben Allen for his longtime support of this issue and friendship. Senator Pat Bates, the Republican leader, for making this really a bipartisan effort. And our own Senator Henry Stern for all his hard work and all his support throughout this whole thing. And they're excellent staffs for making this happen. And I'll give you more information as soon as we get to the next step. Thanks.
Awesome. That's great work, Lou. Congratulations. Laura?
I think the best part is just your timing is impeccable. That this bill will be signed right as you are saying your goodbyes. Thank you, everyone, for staying, those few of you that are still here, and everyone in TV land. Yes, the Labor Exchange was really nice, and it is a wonderful organization. It's really nice to know that it's been here for 25 years and supported by the community. I also had a MAC meeting, Malibu Area Conservation Coalition, where we meet different sustainability people and water people that we meet every month to go over our new water program that we're going to be doing with West Basin and rebates and a lot of the environmental issues in the Santa Monica Mountains. I also went with Riva to a Council of Governments meeting and heard about some new metro projects and some other things that are coming along. And I also had the honor of welcoming Dr. Garrett Reisman, our last Malibu Speaker Series. He was he works on SpaceX and was a NASA astronaut and did spacewalks, and it was really a wonderful event. For those of you who have not had the chance to come to a library speaker series, I really encourage you to come. It's always amazing how many people are still new. When I ask how many people have never been to an event, it was standing room only, and he got a standing ovation. He was a really excellent speaker, and there were a lot of kids there, and one of his biggest messages was how important it is to really apply yourself to math and science. So, of course, every parent in that room was just, beside themselves that, because the kids were hanging on his every word. So it was really nice, and there were a number of teachers there, too. And our next library speaker series will be on September 4th. Oops, I forgot to write it down. Will be on September 5th, I'm sorry. And it will actually be in this room, and it will start at 6, though most of them start at 5. And it will be Eric Schlosser, who wrote Fast Food Nation and a number of other books. And he, at 6 o'clock, he'll be previewing his film, which is called The Bomb, which, of course, I think is the worst title for any film ever made. But, and it's about nuclear weapons. And then he'll be speaking after that. So it should be a really interesting evening. And that's on September 5th in this room. Also went to the California Contract Cities Association Board of Directors put on by the Sheriff's Department. And our city staff did a really great job with our table and with the decorations. And all I can say is we was robbed. And even with the sheriffs there. And also the Malibu Times put on a candidates kind of information session that Jefferson and I were there, and city staff, and to talk to the people that are running for city council and be able to inform them a few things. And I wanted to just add 2 other things. There's such a thing as solar powered generators. So I hope that people look into them, and so that they don't feel like that they need gas ones, or that they can start out as electric and then they can be recharged with solar panels. I actually have one. Haven't had to use it. And then I just wanted to, there are a series of events going on at the Red Ladder Gallery in the Malibu Village, a lot of informational things for our community. And I just wanted to encourage people to go to those. And that they're usually Friday evenings, but a lot of things happening on the weekends, open to the community. And the first community candidates forum will be this Thursday night from 7 to 9 at the Red Ladder Gallery. So I always think it's important for people to hear from their city council candidates. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Skylar?
Yes. Sorry, there's a little delay. Lou, well done. And I think that that's very awesome to see that happen. I don't know if that's one of the first bills that kind of came out of Malibu to get passed in such kind of short time, actually. So I really commend you on all of your hard work in regards to that. I want to thank all of the residents for coming and sharing their concerns with Edison. Hopefully a better conceived plan can come into place and all of the notifications with that. Like Laura said, and I believe actually it was Hans also mentioned some CEQA issues related to generators and whatnot that are installed. I would encourage anyone that's doing that to make sure that they use licensed contractors, usually an electrical contractor and a licensed plumber to do that, as that ties into natural gas. And remind people that if you are installing those, you're only able to use them if you have the adequate fuel supply on site. In the event of an earthquake or something where natural gas would be shut off, those systems usually would not work unless they were some sort of diesel or propane. That leads me back to Laura's comment about the usage of solar as an alternative source with batteries to back up your home. And I think that that's something that can be much more mindful of the environment. I also appreciate Andy bringing up the concerns about the lagoon. This is, another one of those examples of something like global warming that is right in our face when we have, ocean water temperatures along our coasts that are approximately, on average, about 5 degrees higher this year in regards to many of the other years. I know there's an article that just came out in the LA Times, Riva shared with me earlier. But that's kind of, appears to be a lot of common knowledge amongst the scientific community. And it's very frustrated when, I don't know the exact science of whether or not if they had opened the lagoon, if that would have, caused this not to happen if there was a managed breach there, but it probably would have decreased some of the water temperature because you wouldn't have all of the stagnant water there. And when that water sits there and it's stagnant, it heats up, especially when the temperature of the air is very warm. And just wanted to also welcome Julio, our new member of Public Works. I don't know if he's still there or not because I can't see that part of the screen, but welcome to Malibu, and I hope you enjoy your time here. And Malibu is a unique place, and it's a little different than Northern California, but we also enjoy a lot of that open space, and our residents are very mindful of it. So thank you, and yeah, that's it. Later.
Thank you, Skylar. Jefferson?
Thank you, Rick. I attended last week, Wednesday, the Santa Monica Bay Restoration Commission meeting, where in detail we talk about the needs and assessments that are being made in Malibu. I represent the Malibu COG. I mentioned the Trancas Bridge and the lagoon preparation and the work that's going on up there with Army Corps of Engineers, Caltrans, and the Coastal Commission. I also mentioned that the Malibu Lagoon, not knowing about the fish die-off, which occurred a few days later, I had mentioned that the turbidity of the lagoon was an issue and that the heat was an issue, not knowing, of course, like I said, that the fish die-off would happen. But I kind of predicted it, and I keep asking there for Suzanne Good and DPR to address the situation of the necessary breach at Third Point. So I'll keep going over it again. Now I finally have a couple of foundations behind me with my beliefs. The Malibu Surfing Association has done geology surveys with real geologists that are scientifically orientated so DPR can accept their information, as well as the Surfrider Foundation with 10,000 members who have all addressed the issues at the Malibu Lagoon. So I move that forward. Hopefully the funding will come through for continued monitoring. At least we can keep that on board for SMBR. I also attended today with Laura the Library Subcommittee Commission, where we discussed the future of the funding by the county through those taxes that Jeffrey Prang just mentioned. We're going to be in the $9 million range pretty soon, and what to do with those funds and how to engage the Malibu population on where they want that money spent and how they want it spent. So that first draft was very thorough and well done by County of Los Angeles Library people. They were all there, and they will come back with a second draft, and hopefully we can present it to the council soon. I think they're going to move very quickly on that. As far as some of the public speakers, Sherman, she's not here. I did put Greg, who's running the Malibu Adamson properties, in contact with Dale at Malibu Tow to find a place for him to lease in a currently zoned use, which is near Kelly Higgins' auto repair shop. so that he may find a place to put his cars. I reminded him that he would need diapers underneath the leakers. That's technical terms to keep that area clean so nothing leaks into the lagoon in the way of crashed vehicles. So they are talking, and they both have had that dialogue. So Sherman, I hope that helps you out. Andy, I hope that information can be moved forward with you and your friends so that you can support MSA and Surfrider Foundation on the issues with the Malibu Lagoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Jefferson. First of all, I want to apologize to all the speakers tonight, who I think have left, but don't take it personally that I suggested the 2-minute thing, and certainly don't, it's not an indication of the fact that we don't hear you. We're actually fairly proactive about this. City manager and city attorney and myself crafted a letter that we sent off immediately to the PUC about this issue. And in fact, today we met with the liaison for the Public Utilities Commission right before this meeting upstairs. And one of the things he said was, hey, you guys were one of the first to comment on this and send a letter. And we really appreciate the fact that Hans, local activist who is here this evening, was up there actually at the meeting. He was very helpful. He was very sympathetic to our situation, and as I said, the city's gone on record as stating very clearly that they're not in favor of any power shut off during an emergency. In fact, a lot of this discussion that you're seeing now, and the Southern California Edison being here to do this presentation is partially, I think, in response to an interview I did on KTLA where it got their attention. And immediately took me out to a coffee, and you know, she's getting it from her boss that everyone in Malibu is concerned about this. So to all the public speakers out there, if I was less than courteous about the time thing, please don't take that as any indication of lack of engagement by the city, because we're all over it and we agree with you. It's just that it winds up being a long night, and it wasn't even, we're not even to the agenda items yet, so I'm trying to, I probably should have said, we hear you, we're all over it, you don't need to convince us. You don't need to convince us. And we were way ahead of the game in getting engaged on it. And we'll consider everything as we move forward on that. Believe me, I'm a public safety professional, and I've seen these things probably in a more intimate manner than most people. And I take it very seriously. Congratulations on the bond sale. That was cool. I got to actually log on to the site and see the bonds going and who they were going to, and at the end of the day, pretty much they were all gone. And I was kind of bummed that I couldn't buy a bond. I mean, how cool to buy a bond for the city of Malibu. You know,
on the other side of that transaction, so.
Yeah, exactly. I can't do that.
They're writing up.
I'm not allowed to, there you go. So I'm not allowed to do that. But if I was sitting out there, I probably would buy one. I think it'd be really cool. Anyway, so congratulations on that. I think that's really neat. Lou, congratulations. That's an amazing accomplishment. I think you've set a new standard, seriously, for how deep into enemy territory city council members can go and actually get things done. So I sincerely appreciate your dedication and unwavering commitment to accomplishing the mission and actually figuring out how to navigate those strange waters and making alliances and friends along the way. It's not easy. It's not just a go and do it thing. You have to figure out how to do it. And I think that I always say to people, there are a lot of things that we can, at the city council, that we can solve. We can deal with short-term rentals, we can deal with development, we can do this, we can do that. One of the things that we're kind of inhibited from dealing with so far, to a certain degree, is this whole rehab thing. And you have cracked the code a little bit. At least you moved the ball in a lot of direction. And I want to make, I've said it before, but I'm not going to pass up this opportunity to say it again. Really am impressed with what you've done and your accomplishment, and we all owe you a serious debt of gratitude, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate that. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the support of this whole council, and not only our city attorney, but our city manager was at all of these things. So thank you very much.
Very good. And this afternoon, Riva and I met with the Malibu Times, and you were there too. And we, and also the Surfside News, to discuss the new changes that are going on in the center of the city in terms of new traffic lights coming in and that sort of thing. It's an effort that the city manager suggested, which I agree with. Let's get the word out ahead of time. Let's get ahead of the rumor mill. Let's everybody know what's coming. And we sought the alliance of the local newspapers to help us in getting that out. And that was good. It was time well spent. Okay, that's all my comments. And now we are on to the consent calendar. Do I have any items anybody wants to pull on the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Okay, so can we have a roll call vote on that?
Councilmember Rosenthal?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamont?
Yes.
Councilmember Peak?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wagner?
Yes.
Mayor Mellon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Well, it was a hesitation because I was tempted to, punctuate the small number 3B13 where we're actually getting the deeds for $42 million worth of property, but we'll address that at a different time. Okay, we're on to 6 Alpha, which is electric rideshare scooters.
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here to request direction on development of a policy regarding a public safety issue that we're trying to get ahead of the curve on, and that's the issue of the electric rideshare scooters. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of our neighboring cities, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, Santa Barbara, had the unfortunate experience of waking up and having 100, 200 of these scooters just dumped in their downtowns, and then having to, scramble to figure out what to do and putting in emergency, temporary bans while they figure out what to do. And so while this hasn't happened in Malibu, it's come close. There was down at Topanga, one of these rideshare scooter companies put a fleet of them down there, and very quickly they made their way into Malibu. And fortunately, they're very easy to track because you just need to download the app and you can see exactly where they all are. So we have about 4 of them in town right now. But I figured let's not wait until we suddenly wake up and have these all in our town. And so I was here looking for some direction on developing a policy so we can get ahead of the game and we can inform these companies of what our policy is. That's what it is.
Thank you for being proactive. I have a question for the city attorney. Can we just ban those things? No, I get it.
Yes, but we could certainly bring back an ordinance that prohibits them in the city.
Okay, I'd like to open up for discussion. Laura?
Well, first of all, I think it's just so kind of interesting and ironic that no one is here, because I was actually at the Beverly Hills City Council meeting when they did their temporary ban, and there were, a lot of people there, and Santa Monica had hundreds in the street. But I actually had the opportunity to speak to the government relations person for Byrd. He used to work for one of our local legislators. And, I mentioned to him about Malibu, and he goes, Malibu should not have scooters. He said, we're not interested in Malibu. We're not interested in any of that. It's very dangerous. And this is someone who's very familiar with our streets, he used to help run the PCH task force. So I feel pretty confident right now that I would ask staff to come back with an ordinance banning these. because we know that even if it was used like in the Civic Center area or at all, that they would be on PCH within moments. And for any of us who are in, let's say, Santa Monica, which I am a lot, nobody obeys the laws with them. They're riding all over the sidewalks and there's no helmets, and it's pretty dangerous. So that's what I would support.
Thanks, Laura. Lou?
I completely agree. I think that we should bring an ordinance back because this is, according to state law, they're illegal already. But I think it would be nice for us to make our policy very clear. And I agree with you.
Thanks, Lou. Skylar?
I would share a similar concern that I do not think these have any place in Malibu with Pacific Coast Highway.
Very good. Jefferson?
Thank you, Rick. I've already had a run-in with a couple of them. This was about 3 to 4 weeks ago. 3 of them came zipping by in front of my retail store on the sidewalk, full max speed, and using the cutouts, the curb cutouts for the cars to pull into the parking lots as a leap or a jump, getting air. And as they came by, hit the broom in front of my store, kept going. I provided them with the profound highway salute. And at that moment, I elected in my own mind to do everything I could to ban these units from use in this city. I feel that we're accepting a great deal of liability by not coming up with some kind of legislation that says we don't enjoy these here in Malibu. Thank you.
Jefferson, thanks very much. I haven't seen him in Malibu, but I have seen him on my way to the airport in Santa Monica, and it's a major problem, I think. I don't know. I think it has no place here in Malibu, so I agree with everybody. I would support crafting of something that makes it fairly clear that they're not allowed in this town. I'll leave the legal lingo up to the experts. I guess we have to, do I have a speaker? Oh, yeah, I have a public speaker, Graham Clifford. You have 4 minutes, Graham. So long as Hans is here. Is Hans here? Hans left. Hans left you out to dry, and you gave him a minute.
I don't actually need probably 3 minutes now because Laura started the ball rolling here. I was coming up to say exactly what the 4 of you have just said. Hi, Skylar. It's lunchtime over there. I know. I hope you can get to the surf soon. But I think, these things are a disaster. I go into Santa Monica every day, and they're just a disaster as far as public safety is concerned. We have nowhere to use them. Can you imagine going 24 miles or however long our city is on a scooter? That's not going to work. We have Civic Center, Point Hume, and Tranca Center. They're no use in any of those places. They're dangerous, and someone's going to get hurt by them. And as Laura said, I think it was Laura, how are you going to keep them off the PCH once you've got them on the public streets? It's just not going to work. So I was here. I had a whole thing, but I don't need to say it now. So thank you all very much. Please carry through with your ideas and ban these things, please.
Thank you, Graham. Do I have any type of a motion that anyone wants to put before the council?
I think it was just that we were providing direction.
Okay. Are you clear on direction? All right, good. Thank you. All right, we're on to item 7 alpha. SMMUSD bond measure for school repairs and upgrades support. School district separation ad hoc committee. Laura, would you like to address this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On the November ballot will be Measure M for Malibu, and this is a $195 million bond for our schools. This will be paid for by Malibu residents, the greater Malibu community, the Malibu part of our school district, and every penny will stay in Malibu and will be directed by a Malibu Facilities Committee, just the same way as there is one now for Measure ES. And I happen to be a member of the bond committee, and I think that this is very important on a number of different levels. And Rick and I, as the school district separation ad hoc committee, I know Rick is involved, you're on the committee too, and so we feel that this is important on a number of different levels. First, we need to take care of our schools. We need to make sure that we get rid of all of the PCBs and all of the poisons in our school. We need to reimagine our schools for 21st century learning. And we also want to make sure, since our new pathways are moving Juan Cabrillo students to Point Dume, and Cabrillo will become the new middle school, that we have the funds to be able to make that happen and to make things safe. Many of our schools are 70 years old, and we still have leaky roofs. We have a lot of things that we need to take care of. School bonds need to pass with a 55% pass rate. We have always passed school bonds in Malibu, and so we feel very confident. And the important thing is that we have our own separate bond, what's called a district for this from Santa Monica, so they cannot take the money. The county can't take the money, the state can't. It will all stay in Malibu. And it will cost about the same amount as every other bond that we've passed here, and no more. It will be around $30 per $100,000 of assessed value. So it's not what your house is worth, it's what the assessed value is. So if your house is assessed at $1 million, you'll pay $300 a year. If your house is assessed at $500,000, you will pay $175 a year. So, and we feel, and for those whose kids have already grown up and you don't have any more kids in the school, I say that when your kids were in school, the people whose kids had already left, they supported your kids and the schools then, just as we ask people to support the next generation and the education of those kids. So welcome for any questions from the council or anyone else.
I'd just like to say, you said three very important things. One is this money is really needed. The second important thing was it's coming from Malibu. And the most important thing is it's staying in Malibu. So I completely support this.
Skylar, any comments?
I appreciate the, I think we have to pass the bond and we have to get the money to stay in Malibu. So it sort of seems like a win-win for the community. We've, fought to have the local control, and here it is. So now we need to step up to the plate. And I very much agree with what Laura said about, people's, commitment to their community and the fact that great schools make for a great community, and having the funds to do that, this is the way. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Jefferson?
Thank you, Rick. One thing that we should remember is when we pass bonds like this, hopefully it passes, that we're talking about a community resource here. Schools are a resource. When the schools are strong, the schools have good attendance, the home values in the area, for all the realtors out there, maintain their stability, or they go up in value, because the committee and the commit to that funding is citywide. So I support this. I hope most of you out there will support it. We need the 55 or above. Once again, this is for your community. It's a couple $100 more a year is not going to affect any of us. You really think this one out. This bond needs to pass. We need the money to fix these schools, and this will really strengthen our community for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Jefferson. As a member of the ad hoc committee and the bond committee, I agree with everything everyone else has said. It is a commitment to the community for the future.
So I'd like to make a motion to ask the mayor to send a letter to SMMUSD in support of the bond measure that will be placed on the ballot. And I just want to let people know that the Measure M committee will have a booth at the Chili Cook-Off all weekend. So if you'd like to come by and show your support too. Of course, we're looking for donations for a campaign, but more importantly, if you have questions and just to show your support for the campaign, that's something that we're looking for. So hope to see you all at the chili cook-off too. That's all part of the motion. No, I'm just kidding. The motion is to just ask to support having the mayor send a letter in support of Measure M.
I will second that motion.
Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Rosenthal,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wagner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamont,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak,
Yes.
Mayor Mullen,
Yes.
motion carries.
On to item 7 Bravo, which is tree trimming. Councilmember Rosenthal. I do have one speaker after you do your presentation.
This really came from the discussion we had earlier and some of the consequences or causes that would make Edison have to turn off our electricity. And it actually, I have to give Hans some of the credit. I had actually been thinking about this a bit over the last couple of years about palm fronds, which is a really hard thing to say and not laugh, but flying palm fronds is a danger, and I've actually almost been hit by them. And I remember when my kids were young, walking along a lot on the streets with them, and they would be falling. And they're really from a lot of people don't take care of their palm trees. Sometimes it's difficult because they get very high, and they don't trim them and take off the dying fronds.
That's called a beard.
A beard, okay, thank you. So I just wanted to get a sense from the council if we were interested in looking at some kind of regulations. And I appreciate that we got some very thoughtful correspondence from the public. Some of them mentioned outlawing future palm trees totally because they tend to grow and they're not something that can be trimmed back a lot, and they grow into people's primary views that are protected. Some of the palms also, I guess their seeds or whatever it's called, I can't remember what the term is, that they just, fall to the ground and then they repopulate very quickly all over. So they're not in control. And then also concerned about the tree trimming and affecting nesting birds, though I do know that we already have tree trimming regulations, and you're not allowed to trim trees during the nesting season. And then also some concerns about monarch butterfly nesting. So I think that would all be looked at and taken into consideration about when people could look at this. And I think we really need to be proactive and look at making sure that people are trimming not only their palm trees, but their trees around power lines. And I know Edison does some of that work, but I think that we also need to all take responsibility. The city also, as well as the school district and other entities, public entities that own trees, or the land on which the trees sit, and be proactive and really do a good job with taking care of these dead branches. So I'd like to just bring that up and hear what the council has to say about that after our public comment.
Thanks, Laura. Graham Clifford, once again, with an extra minute by Hans Lotz, who's not here, so you only have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members again. I've attached this to my speaker slip, which is a thing from Environmental Tree Care, which is one of the local companies that is doing good, always done good work. They've been here for 25-something years. I'll send all of you an email with this as an attachment. But I don't know how, I mean, don't we already take care of trees that are the power, does the city trim trees near power lines that are in the public domain?
It's a question, no. SCE hires out vendors to do that trimming in the areas near the power lines.
Because I know up in the county does it. The county trims from above the city limits wherever it goes like this, but the county does a lot of tree trimming up in that area. But I mean, basically, I'm all in favor of Laura's motion. I don't know how you regulate private property tree owners other than that there are plenty of people who are responsible and plenty who are not. I mean, there are many, you can easily trim palm trees. I do it all the time. I have palm trees on my property and they're always trimmed back. And they've never been an issue. And I lived through the '93 fire there, so I can tell you that my palm trees didn't catch fire because they were trimmed. And eucalyptus trees didn't catch fire either, for that matter. So there's a lot of misnomers and truths and falsehoods about what burns and what doesn't burn. So we need a licensed contractor, which is why I suggested I'm always in favor of hiring local people when we can to take care of our business, you know. And as a matter of a disclosure, I've never met Chris Laguadice, who owns this company. I've never met him. I have spoken to him on the phone. The last time I spoke about trying to hire local tree people to do our work, which is a few months ago now, I have spoken to him on the phone to ask him if he would be amenable to me coming before you and talking and asking to consider hiring him to do our work for us, because he's a local, he cares about Malibu, he's a local company which we need to support, and he's here in an emergency basis. He's not down in I don't know, wherever our tree people come from, but I know at the moment they're not local. Anyway, I did have a conversation with him, but I don't know him, and we've never worked together. But I am aware of his company, and I think he'd be a good person to have. As would Malibu Towing. I have to put a word in for Malibu Towing. Malibu Towing, to me, is Malibu. I mean, they've done so much stuff for me personally as well as for the community. We have to keep those people here. I didn't come to speak on Malibu Towing, but when someone spoke about it, I just have to bring that up. We have to keep them here, and that's why we have to hire local people to do our work for us, because they care about us like we do. Thank you very much, and like you do.
Thank you, Graham. An ardent advocate for local heroes. I appreciate that. Yes, you may.
I think that it's not just trimming the trees, it's also what happens with the dead palm fronds is that they, no, I'm going to start laughing, the beard, that they, in the winds, they go flying, and they go flying into the power lines, and it's a real problem, so.
Well, I actually had the same experience that Graham did. In 1993, the fire came into my living room, but the palm trees that I had, which were always trimmed, and the eucalyptus trees also that were always trimmed, had no damage at all. So I agree there are lots of misconceptions about this. But nevertheless, as far as, I don't know how we enforce this. We have a tree ordinance, and the sky is not a protected view when the palm tree grows into it. So, and I know because I was on that committee for over a year. So if there's a way we can work this into what we have, as far as banning palm trees is concerned, you're not really talking about that. Only somebody sent a letter. I think that's not a great idea. But what it says we should do here is direct staff to conduct additional research before bringing back the ordinance. But I'd like to find out more about this, and if other people do it, and if there's a way to actually enforce it. I completely agree that we should trim everything, or Edison should, or somebody should. That's anywhere near any
That
kind of
already
electrical
happens.
thing.
A lot of that already happens.
But so where is this taking it after that?
But so there's two things. One, there can be other dead branches on your property that can then, fall off and go flying and hit a power line. So it might not be right on the power line. And dead palm fronds go flying, and they can travel a lot of distances, and they fall down on the ground and hurt people too. So
How do we-
those are the
how do
ones
we
that
do
I was
that?
even more
I mean, to
concerned.
go on people's property and look at that dead palm fronds laying on the ground? I mean, how do we actually enforce this?
Well, I think we can enforce it the way we enforce a lot of things, which is if there's a complaint or if one of our crews sees something, I don't think that we want to be going onto people's property lines. Also, because most of the time, the power lines are going to be pretty visible, aren't they? Going to be most of our power lines pretty visible.
They do observations and they do drive-bys. They used to do line cleaning with the high-powered pressure water trucks. And during those high-energy cleanings, they would make assessments about the trees that were invasive to their power lines. So they're constantly monitoring it, and they hire the vendors. Splunde is the one that does it in most of the neighborhoods in Malibu, and they keep that barrier open on their own, and they pay for that service. Also, the city of Malibu, if we look at our plant palette for new homes and new construction, that many of the palms are considered invasive and not permitted to be planted. So we do have some working apparatus to control the future of palm trees, but the word you're looking for when the palms leave is called a catapult. That's what the tree guys call it.
Look at that, I mean, where are they catapulting to?
Usually it's into other trees, and they may be invasive or they may be indigenous, but they do continue the fire footprint,
Right.
as what happened in the fire where it crossed PCH and it burned
Right.
part of the Ralph's parking lot. Those were palm fronds that did fly across PCH and ignited other palm fronds. But Rick could probably opine on that as well because he sees it.
Skylar, got any comments?
I think that in terms of how there's no question that there's a lot of trees that need maintenance in the city, and if the dead palm fronds, sail in the wind, they end up in power lines or damaging somebody's property. So I think the enforcement issue may be kind of difficult, and again, it's always awkward when we come up with laws that maybe pits neighbor against neighbor or whatever. But there's no question that we do need to maintain the trees. I know that when Janet and I first got our house on Wildlife, that the neighbor raised some concerns. The previous owner hadn't, trimmed some of the palm fronds, and actually the fire department raised the same concerns as well. And that was immediately taken care of. But we all know that there's a lot of those trees in the city that aren't maintained, and some sort of an ordinance that is very much mindful of the nesting birds, butterflies, etc. Probably at some point we should have something back and come up with something. And I thank Laura for bringing this forward. I'd like to also see what a handful of the other cities that have these kind of ordinances in place, what their language is. Maybe if staff could gather that and bring that back to us.
Thank you. Well, as the only guy up here who probably actually enforced the removal of dead palm fronds in my other job, which I'm allowed to do, here's my commentary on trees and fire safety. Trees are very dangerous. Trees are the things that will burn your house down. If you're not home and the fire comes through and the rain of embers goes all over your house and your house is relatively fire safe in its construction, the trees near your house catch on fire, your house is going to catch on fire. And you can see that all the time in these news footage of like the Tea fire in Santa Barbara. The fire would come through and it moves on, and slowly a tree catches on fire, and then the house catches on fire. So people don't really realize these things are very dangerous to your house. Trees within 15 feet of your house are extremely dangerous because you want your house to be able to survive when you're not there. So that's my little tree commentary. But getting back to the fire department does do brush inspections, and they will cite people for some of these palm fronds. It's kind of varies between the inspector and how close it is in close proximity to the house. I always told everybody to cut them all down on their property because they are a hazard to everybody around. So that's a possibility, is maybe have a better dialogue with the fire department and bring it up through them, because they do have the enforcement capability, which is interesting without having to come up with a whole new thing. But if you look at pictures of Malibu 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 70 years ago, there's no trees. There were no trees. And where there are people, there are trees now. And the longer people are there, the thicker the trees. And my neighborhood is probably as big of an offender as anybody. It's almost like frickin' Sleepy Hollow of trees when you go inside. And it's dangerous. And it's to everyone's advantage. It's for everyone's best interest to understand the downside of the trees. But, of course, there's a significant expense in trimming trees. Like you have a big giant tree and you want to thin it out and do it in a aesthetically pleasing manner. That costs some money. That costs a lot of money. And I would be interested in hearing what Christy has to say if there are any of the other cities that she represents have anything like this sort of thing that we can kind of get educated on.
There's all kinds of regulations on trees, and we can bring back some options for you to look at. But definitely both for fire, but also for aesthetics, and there's all kinds of regulations.
And I know that the fire department, comes around a lot. They would come down, and on my old street, there were 2 huge palm trees that the owners never, ever, ever cleaned up the dead or trimmed it. And it was right on the street. It was right by the power poles, and the fire department never asked them to do anything. So, and the other thing is, the irony of the whole thing is that if you look at a whole different world in California, which is the environmentalists, is that they're asking people to plant trees by their homes because it provides natural shade and cooling of your house, and keeping the warmth in and the cool in the summer. So it's finding that right combination, and obviously certain denser urban areas, it's very different, and we need trees for oxygen and all of that. And obviously there are certain trees that are more flammable than others, the whole bit. So I would like to just ask for consensus to have staff do some research about maybe what some other cities have done, especially maybe more with the fronds, I'm not going to say palm fronds, and see if there are other municipalities that do this and how they might do the enforcement and whether it's been successful. And maybe also get a little research about how many fires do get started by these dead, if that research is available, by these catapults flying around.
Yeah, they don't get started, but they certainly can spread, and they can make things a lot worse, for sure. And are you, is what the focus of your interest, in particular, fire safety?
Yes.
All right, is that clear enough direction?
I think we have consensus on that.
On to 7 Charlie, Senate Bill SB 833, Emergency Alerts, support Mayor Mullen. Recommended action at the request of Mayor Mullen, authorize the mayor to send a letter in support for SB 833, legislation that would require the California Office of Emergency Services to develop guidelines for alerting and warning the public of an emergency that would require OES within 6 months of making the statewide guidelines available to provide personnel of each emergency management office within a county with training on the guidelines and the Federal Wireless Emergency Act at least annually through its California Specialized Training Institute. No fiscal impact. So essentially, this is something that's happening, and we want to send a letter essentially in support of SB 833. Anybody want to have any discussion?
Well, we need to, I agree, we should do, we need to do it like tomorrow, because the session ends at the end of this week, so it's right away.
I'll support that. You want to make a motion, Rick?
I'll make a motion to support me writing a letter.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Mayor Mullen,
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenthal,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamont,
Yes.
Councilmember Peak,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wagner,
Yes.
motion carries.
On to 7 Delta. That's Mayor Mullen to make his appointment to the Public Safety Commission. And he stayed to the end. Andy Cohen is going to be my appointment to the Public Safety Commission. First of all, I want to thank you, Andy, very much for being willing to step up here and give of yourself to the community. It's not easy, but be careful, because that's where I got my start and wound up here, so it's a slippery slope. But I think probably the best thing I like about Mr. Cohen is the fact that he has a front row view of what I consider to be one of the most dangerous places in Malibu, and that is PCH in front of El Matador State Beach. So Andy, thank you very much. I appreciate you sticking around, and I applaud you for taking your first step into public service, and it is a slippery slope, okay? So be careful. You're welcome to come up here and make a few comments if you would like. You don't have to. You don't have to. But I also want to say that the reason Andy is being appointed is because of he's a replacement for Chris Hansen, and Chris Hansen is no slacker, okay? But Chris Hansen is a captain in the fire department, and he gets deployed all over the state because of his particular job, which is in charge of camp crews. So he unfortunately is just simply not physically possible for him to be there at any of these meetings, and he felt really bad about that. But and he warned me about it before he even stepped up, and I said, do it anyway. And so I wanted to say thank you very much to Chris for all of his hard work in support of the city of Malibu, both on the Public Safety Commission and in the fire department. Andy, you have the podium.
Okay, it's late, so I'll be quick. I'm very interested in public safety on PCH. I've been a resident here for 22 years. All 3 of my kids went through the Malibu school system. I've seen all of the horrible things that have happened on PCH lately, where our population has stayed the same basically since I moved here 22 years ago, but the amount of visitors has increased so much. And actually, I am across from El Matador State Beach, and the parking lot was empty almost year-round until the last few years. So I think it's a question of all these articles on the internet saying best beaches in California, Malibu, come visit on Matador Beach, and it's created amazing problems. Same thing with Winding Way and the best hikes in Malibu, the best hikes in California. And I think that the major thing that can help is more police presence, as someone said before. Even with all the people driving through Malibu, I mean, Saturdays and Sundays, everyone from Southern California and other places want to cruise PCH to look at the ocean and eat and do this and that. It's just too many vehicles for the size of our narrow highway. And I think the biggest deterrent is to have more police visible as a deterrent, and people aren't going to do stupid things if they see a lot of police presence. So that'll be my main focus.
Great. Thank you very much, Andy. I really appreciate you sticking around here and coming down to the meeting, and for being willing to accept this responsibility. Look forward to working with you. And Chris Hansen, if you're out there, I just want to say that don't feel bad, because I actually had to resign being a public safety commissioner because I was way overextended at the time, and I had to focus on some other things. So, yeah, so we got plans for you, Chris. All right. That concludes our business. The meeting is adjourned.